The story begins with Kim Ho, our protagonist, explaining the world of the game Dragon Slayer Academy. In this game, players develop through countless trials and dangerous situations during their time at the Academy. After graduating, their mission becomes clear. They're sent to the front lines to face powerful bosses, including dragons. And Kim Ho, his role in the game is at the very top. He's ranked number 1 on the integrated leaderboard, the strongest support player of them all. A massive battle erupts on the field as monsters flood through a dimensional gate. At the forefront of this chaos, an S-rank player known as Lee Seo charges ahead. With deadly precision, he eliminates monsters in a flash, showing no hesitation. Next, the Hong Hyundai, also an S-rank, unleashes her magical power with her staff, incinerating waves of monsters with elegant and deadly spells. Following her is the Ko Yohan, surrounded by a dark aura as he swings his sword, cutting through enemies with overwhelming force. As the dust settles and the battlefield clears, Kim Ho and his team walk away from the scene. In that quiet moment, Kim Ho reflects on what he loves most about the game, not just the action, but something deeper. Later on, Kim Ho finds himself inside a dungeon, where he discovers a glowing red crystal. His eyes light up as he quietly acknowledges his find. A system notification immediately appears, revealing that this is a true bloodstone, a rare item that can increase a character's class by 1 rank within the Empire class category. Without hesitation, Kim Ho calls out for Carmilla. A girl emerges from the shadows behind him, a vampire NPC he's been training. Kim Ho thinks back on the game's unique mechanic, the Raise a Hero system. It allows players to take a clueless first-year NPC from the Academy and develop them into an S-rank hero. He hands the Bloodstone to Carmilla, and right before his eyes, she undergoes a stunning transformation. No longer a simple NPC, she becomes the Vampire Queen Carmilla, a newly minted S-rank. Kim Ho smiles to himself. He's just raised his 1,000th S-rank hero. Suddenly, the scene cuts to the real world. Kim Ho is back at his computer, sitting comfortably as he yawns. Everything up until now, the game world, the battles, the transformations, all of it happened inside the game. He removes his headset, a faint smile playing on his lips, quietly acknowledging that there's nothing left for him to do. He's reached S-rank in every class. His inventory is overflowing with duplicates. He wonders if maybe he should try something different, like raising some of the more average characters just for fun. But then, a new notification pops up unexpectedly. Kim Ho frowns. A system alert at this hour? Curious, he clicks it open. The message congratulates him. He's achieved a feat no one else has, 1,000 S-rank graduates. Because of this, a special quest is now available. He's surprised. This is a quest he's never heard of before. Then, another message appears, one that stuns him. The objective: prevent the destruction of the world. The difficulty: EX rank. Kim Ho is speechless. Up until now, S rank was considered the highest possible tier in the game. But now, there are EX rank items, skills, and even EX rank heroes. His mind races with possibilities. Without a second thought, he clicks accept. There's no way he's passing up brand new content like this. Another notification confirms the beginning of the quest. But just as he starts to process it, something strange happens. Kim Ho finds himself no longer at his desk, but standing in the middle of a forest. He rubs his head in disbelief. He's inside the Dragon Slayer Academy game. It hits him. The reincarnation quest didn't just give him a mission. It actually transported him inside the game world. He glances around. Trees tower over him. Sweat forms on his brow. He recognizes this place instantly. It's the tutorial forest. Which means he's starting from scratch. Opening the system menu, Kim Ho quickly checks his status window. What he sees frustrates him. His progress is gone. It's a full reset. No perks, no bonuses for being reincarnated. But then, just as he's about to complain, a new set of notifications appears. The system grants him reincarnation perks, traits like Copy and Monarch F, along with skills such as Copy and Amplification. His eyes widen. These weren't part of the normal game. Reincarnation perks? That changes everything. Crossing his arms, Kim Ho examines the system. Even if he's back to level 1, he's confident he can grind his way back. And honestly, if he's going to start fresh, a few advantages are only fair. Then another message appears. It's the first quest in the tutorial. The objective? Survive for 10 minutes. The reward? A new student character from Dragon Slayer Academy. Time remaining, 9 minutes and 56 seconds. Kim Ho instantly recalls what this tutorial used to be like. It should be simple, just avoid low-level monsters until time runs out. But then, he hears footsteps. Heavy ones, too loud for any weak mobs. Something's not right. Suddenly, Kim Ho notices something in the sky. 2 massive dragons locked in combat, soaring above the forest. The sight of them makes his heart skip a beat. Dragons? Here? Panic hits him as he begins to run. 2 S-rank bosses showing up in the tutorial zone. That had to be the result of the EX quest. Nothing else could explain something this absurd. As he sprints, a chilling thought crosses his mind. If even one of those attacks hits him, he's dead. Before he can even begin his new journey, it'll be over. But then, another idea sparks. Maybe this chaos is the perfect opportunity. Kim Ho slows down and focuses his eyes on the dragons. He remembers the mechanics behind one of his reincarnation perks. To copy a skill or trait, he needs to witness it activate with his own eyes, and he must correctly identify the target's name and rank. For him, though, that's the easy part. Suddenly, an enormous explosion rocks the forest, the dragons clashing mid-air. Right then, a system notification flashes before Kim Ho's eyes. He successfully registered a new target trait. Elemental resistance has been copied and saved into his slot. Sweat trickles down his face, but he's smiling now. That worked. He didn't expect to score an S-rank ability so early. Another notification pops up, explaining what the trait does. Elemental resistance greatly reduces all elemental damage. Testing his new power, Kim Ho lightly lifts some nearby leaves. He muses to himself. It would have been great to get a skill too, but without a mana engine, he wouldn't be able to use it yet. Still, getting an S-rank trait this early? That alone was a solid win. Just then, he notices something strange. The wind. It's blowing the leaves backward. That's not normal. Something was building. He glances back toward the dragons. Both of them are charging up a devastating attack. His heart drops. It's a breath attack. The dragon's strongest move. Even with elemental resistance, this was too much. He turns and runs with everything he's got, knowing that getting caught at this distance might actually kill him. Before he can even escape fully, the dragons unleash their devastating breath attacks. But just as the energy surges toward him, the system intervenes. A notification appears right in time. The first tutorial is complete. The reward list scrolls by Dragon Slayer Academy uniform, a student ID, and a train ticket. Immediately, another notification follows. Tutorial 2 has begun. The objective is simple: board the train to Dragon Slayer Academy. The scene shifts. Inside the train, a boy looks down at a sleeping girl beside him. Seeing there are no empty seats, he tries to politely get her attention. He asks her if she wouldn't mind sharing the seat. When she doesn't respond, he asks again, unsure if she's asleep. Before he can figure out what to do next, Kim Ho suddenly appears inside the train car, transported there by the system. He notices the girl and gently speaks to her, apologizing for disturbing her and politely asking if the seat is taken. The boy turns to Kim Ho, slightly awkward, explaining that she hasn't responded and he's not sure if she's asleep or just ignoring them. But then, without warning, the girl wakes up. Kim Ho calmly repeats his question, and the girl responds immediately, giving him permission to sit beside her. He thanks her with a soft laugh and introduces himself as Kim Ho before taking the seat next to her. The boy watches them, a bit confused and unsure how to react. The girl rubs her eyes and finally introduces herself as Seo Yin. Kim Ho then gestures to the remaining space and invites the boy to sit as well. He reassures him it's fine. The boy lights up with excitement at the offer and quickly introduces himself, Go Hyun-woo. Go Hyun-woo looked toward Kim Ho and gave a polite bow, thanking him sincerely. He mentioned he might have had to stand for an hour if not for the seat and promised to repay the debt someday, addressing Kim Ho respectfully as Hyung. Kim Ho watched him and couldn't help but think that the boy gave off the classic aura of a wuxia protagonist. Everything from his speech to his posture felt carefully refined. Curious, Kim Ho casually asked what had caused him to be late. At that, Hyun-woo's eyes lit up with excitement. He explained he'd seen 2 dragons along the way and got so distracted watching them that he completely lost track of time. Kim Ho paused, remembering his own narrow escape from the dragon's breath attacks earlier. A cold sweat formed on his face as he admitted he saw them too. Internally, though he was still shaken, he had barely made it out alive. Suddenly, the train began to move. The students murmured with excitement, reacting to the motion. Kim Ho silently reflected as the train departed. This was Dragon Slayer Academy, a place he had returned to countless times while raising heroes. He had known every detail, every secret, to the point where it had grown repetitive. But this time there was something new. As Kim Ho looked around, he noticed that none of the faces were familiar. Not Go Hyun-woo, not Seo Yin, not even the train staff. While the world mirrored the setting of Dragon Slayer Academy, the cast had changed completely. That could only mean the events and quests might play out differently as well. He made a mental note to observe everything closely and track what had been altered so far. His thoughts were interrupted when he felt a gaze. Seo Yin was staring at him without looking away. Kim Ho noticed it right away and found it a little unnerving. What he didn't know, though, was that Seo Yin possessed a special ability. Her eyes could analyze and convert everything she saw into measurable data. When she glanced at the boy sitting across from her earlier, his status screen appeared normal, completely average. But when she looked at Kim Ho, what she saw was unclassifiable. His status screen displayed nothing but question marks. That alone made her think this guy was different. Special, even. She could count on one hand the number of times she'd seen a screen like that. Just then, Kim Ho noticed her staring and, a bit uneasy, asked her directly why she kept looking at him like that. Seo Yin paused for a moment, remembering advice someone had given her before she left for the academy. If someone catches your interest, try being nice to them. Holding on to that memory, she reached in her bag, pulled out a small packet of cookies, and offered one to Kim Ho. Surprised, he accepted it with an awkward thank you and asked if she made them herself. She confirmed it with a nod. Kim Ho took a bite. The taste was just okay. Nothing remarkable, but a kind gesture nonetheless. A moment later, Kim Ho turned to Go Hyun-woo and brought up something he'd been curious about. He asked if the wrapped object beside him was a longsword. Hyun-woo smiled and replied confidently that Kim Ho had a good eye. He explained that it was a sacred relic of his martial sect, though unfortunately, he wasn't yet qualified to break its seal, so it remained wrapped up for now. Until then, he wielded a regular iron sword, which he considered a trusty companion. Despite that, he claimed he hadn't met a worthy opponent yet. Kim Ho chuckled at that and teased lightly, suggesting maybe something sturdier would be better suited. Suddenly, the door to the compartment swung open with energy, and a cheerful voice rang out. A blonde-haired boy stepped in loudly and greeted everyone, asking if he could hang out there for a while. Without hesitation, Go Hyun-woo welcomed him warmly and told him to feel free to stay. The new boy laughed and thanked them for the hospitality, saying he'd just hang around for a bit. But Kim Ho immediately picked up on something strange. The guy had been loud, but there were no audible footsteps. That alone made Kim Ho suspect who, or rather what, he might be dealing with. Turning to the boy with a sharp look, Kim Ho pointed out that he didn't seem like he came just to sit. He asked directly what his real business was. Hearing the words from our protagonist, the blonde boy let out an awkward laugh, wiping sweat from his face as if he'd been caught red-handed. Trying to play it off, he quickly pulled out a card and held it up with excitement, as if presenting an official ID. The card read, Dragon Slayer Academy Errand Service. We'll find you anything for the right price. He claimed they were just passing through to promote their business. Curious, the protagonist asked if they really could find anything. With confidence, the yellow-haired boy confirmed, absolutely anything. But then, with a more serious tone, the protagonist followed up with a pointed question, even if it meant bending or breaking some school rules. Still riding the wave of enthusiasm, the boy didn't hesitate. Yes, he said, just give the word. Our protagonist glanced down at the card he had just received. He then asked if the boy was currently being chased because of one of those jobs. The question caught the boy off guard. At first, he answered instinctively, of course not, then stopped mid-sentence, realizing what he'd just admitted. With a nervous expression, he peered out the nearby window, obviously scanning for someone, and chuckled nervously, realizing he'd been far too obvious. The protagonist, observing all this, noted that the boy's constant glances out the window and his anxious behavior had made it easy to figure out something was wrong. Embarrassed, but trying to recover, the boy, Shin Byung, insisted he'd explain everything in detail later. But before he could say another word, his eyes widened in alarm. Right in front of him stood 4 students, 2 girls and 2 boys. One of the girls, with yellow hair and an angry expression, stepped forward and announced that they already knew everything. The protagonist turned to see who had arrived and recognized them immediately. It was the disciplinary committee, already on the scene much earlier than expected. He recalled in his mind how the student-run disciplinary committee operated within and around the academy, enforcing law and order. First-year members, like these, were enrolled early, briefed on procedures, and immediately deployed for field duty. With a commanding tone, the girl in front demanded Shin hand over an item that he apparently wasn't allowed to possess. But Shin, still trying to deflect with humor, responded by asking why they were chasing him down like loan sharks. Before he could get another word out, a sudden jolt of electricity shot through him, making him cry out from the shock. The protagonist's eyes shifted toward the girl who had launched the attack, analyzing her abilities. For what he could tell, she was a lightning-type mage, a rare sight. Glancing down at the cookie still in his hand, he remembered that his slot was currently empty. He figured this was the perfect opportunity to gain a useful skill. Meanwhile, Shin struggled to recover from the shock, quietly muttering that this situation was bad. He wasn't one for direct confrontations. At that moment, the protagonist casually dropped the cookie onto the floor, almost like he had done it by accident. The disciplinary committee girl, now putting on gloves, warned that if Shin wasn't planning to cooperate, she'd have no choice but to subdue him. Without hesitation, she activated her skills. A brilliant flash erupted as a lightning-formed bird, shaped like a hummingbird, launched straight toward Shin with intense speed. But before the magical bird could land its blow, the protagonist stepped in and caught it mid-air with precision. The girl's eyes widened in disbelief. She demanded to know if Shin had brought along an accomplice. But the protagonist stepped forward with confidence, clarifying that he wasn't here as anyone's ally. Then, pointing firmly at the cookie lying on the floor, he claimed that she was the one who made him drop it. The accusation caught her completely off guard. With a bewildered and slightly embarrassed expression, she repeated the word, cookies, almost as if she couldn't believe that was the issue. And in that very moment, a notification popped up for the protagonist. He had successfully acquired a lightning attribute magic skill, Hummingbird. Kim Ho doubled down on his earlier complaint, pointing out that she really did make him drop his cookie. Anyone would be annoyed if their snack got ruined like that, he argued. The disciplinary committee's long-haired boy scoffed, calling it a pathetic excuse to start a fight and warning Kim Ho to step aside, unless he wanted to get burned. Go Hyun-woo, unwilling to let things escalate against his new companions, put a hand near his sword and told them to be careful. If weapons were drawn, he wouldn't stay out of it. Tension thickened in the train car. Shin Byung-chul froze, clearly panicking as the situation threatened to spiral. Then the lightning mage girl from the disciplinary committee raised a hand and cut him before things exploded. She offered to send Kim Ho a dessert coupon for the student cafeteria as compensation. That settled him immediately. He laughed and accepted. Shin, still recovering from the earlier electric hit and now feeling left out, anxiously asked what would happen to him. Kim, teasing, told him that sounded like a personal problem. Privately, Kim Ho was pleased. He'd successfully intercepted her lightning spell and now had the chance to make good use of the skill he'd copied. A system update appeared in front of him. Copy, skill, hummingbird copy, trait, elemental resistance. Once the committee retrieved the contraband they were after, the yellow-haired girl exposed what Shin had actually done. He'd stolen the station attendant's wig as a prank, and it had gone too far. Kim Ho silently agreed. Yeah, that one deserved getting zapped. As she passed him, the lightning mage gave cold advice. Stay away from Shin Byung-chul. Kim Ho just laughed and waved it off. He'd make his own decisions. The long-haired boy from the group pointed at Kim on the way out, saying he'd remember him. After the disciplinary committee left, Go Hyun-woo confirmed what they suspected. Those students really were from the committee, right? Shin nodded and explained that only top-tier elites were selected. The lightning caster who hit him was Song Chun-hai, granddaughter of Thunder Lord Song Jung-yoon of the Topaz Mage Tower. Hyun-woo asked about the others. Shin broke them down. Jo Byok was a disciple of the Fist King. Han Saman had been trained by the Sword Empress. And Jim Yohan was the sole heir of the Golden Lotus Pavilion. Serious backgrounds, every one of them. With that warning delivered, Shin grabbed the door, announced it had been nice meeting everyone, and told them not to forget to say hi next time before ducking out. Hyun-woo watched him go and chuckled about how lively that bunch was. Then, turning to Kim, he asked if he really stepped in just because of snacks. Kim Ho laughed lightly and admitted the truth. He mostly wanted a closer look at that rare lightning magic. Hyun-woo was puzzled. All Kim had done was deflect one of Song's spells. How much could he have learned from that? Kim asked how familiar Hyun-woo was with the spell called Hummingbird. Hyun-woo thought about it. That was actually his first time seeing it. It moved so fast his eyes could barely follow. It didn't seem designed to crush targets. It looked more like a control spell, something that could immobilize or paralyze. Kim told him he was half right. When pressed, he activated the copied magic to demonstrate. The spell got its name because it mimicked a hummingbird's flight, darting, precise, highly reactive. Its performance varied dramatically depending on the caster's skill, which meant Song Chun-hai's control was impressive based on how cleanly she sent it. After catching the lightning bird with ease, Kim Ho took a moment to explain the situation to Go Hyun-woo. He laid out his analysis with clarity. If Song Chun-hai, the lightning mage who cast the spell, had been an experienced magician, then the spell's behavior would have changed the instant he had interfered. But instead, the spell had flown directly into his hand without deviation. This revealed something important. She lacked either refined control or real-world combat experience. Go Hyun-woo was stunned at how much could be deduced from such a small moment. The idea that a single spell could reveal so much about someone's abilities fascinated him. But Kim Ho wasn't finished thinking. Internally, he considered the bigger picture. Chun-hai had used an E-rank skill, but pushed it with power resembling a D-rank's output. That could only mean two things. Either she had a particularly strong trait amplifying her abilities, or her mana reserves were naturally vast. In either case, she certainly lived up to being the granddaughter of the famed Thunder Lord, Song Jung-yoon. Later, outside the room, the two of them walked and talked casually. Go Hyun-woo, still deep in thought, remarked that it felt like fate. They'd just met, and already he was learning so much from Kim Ho. But Kim Ho brushed it off, joking that it wasn't a big deal. It was just the kind of knowledge he'd share with anyone. Appreciating the humility, Go Hyun-woo clasped his hands together in a respectful gesture, promising to return the favor. If Kim Ho ever needed help, he only had to ask. Kim Ho, with a sly grin, decided to take him up on the offer right away. But first, he asked to borrow a single silver coin. Go Hyun-woo blinked in confusion. not sure where this was going. A short time later, they found themselves sitting in front of a broken-looking slot machine labeled out of order. Kim Ho sat down, eyes fixed on it, and explained without turning to his companion. This train car had once been a sightseeing attraction, and this room was once a casino. It was clear the restoration process wasn't yet complete. Go Hyunwoo glanced at the machine skeptically and asked why they were using it, given the out-of-order sign. Kim Ho's reply was vague, something like, "Who knows?" and he placed the silver coin into the machine. Go Hyunwoo protested loudly, insisting it was clearly broken, but Kim Ho ignored him and pulled the lever. Inwardly, Kim Ho was focused. This wasn't just random gambling. He believed this was a hidden event, a concealed game mechanic. In his mind, this slot machine was one of those rare must-pick events hidden behind misdirection. When a machine only spat out a plain water bottle, both of them stared in quiet disappointment. Neither had expected much, but the result was still underwhelming. That's when Go Hyunwoo, still watching Kim Ho intently, asked why he had come along in the first place. Kim Ho answered plainly. While playing the slots wasn't technically against the rules, the items one could receive from them were. That was where the violation lay. Go Hyunwoo quickly caught on, so his job was to stand guard. Kim Ho confirmed it. He added that the disciplinary committee rarely visited this part of the train, so the risk was minimal. But before the words had fully settled, a voice snapped from behind them. A girl stood there, sharp-eyed, commanding, and introduced herself as Han Samin, a first-year member of the disciplinary committee. She demanded to know what they were doing, making it clear that touching the machine was forbidden. If they continued, there would be demerits. Kim Ho leaned in toward Go Hyunwoo and whispered, asking him to buy some time. Go Hyunwoo replied in the same hushed tone that he would try, and that there was something he'd been meaning to test anyway. Han Samin, however, was not easily dissuaded. She raised a finger toward them and warned that helping another student break the rules would also earn demerits. Go Hyunwoo didn't hesitate. Bowing with respect, he took full responsibility, saying this was his decision and his alone. Annoyed, Han Samin scoffed at his boldness. But before she could say more, Go Hyunwoo drew his sword. He recalled that Han Samin had trained under the legendary Sword Empress and politely requested a duel. Intrigued, Han Samin asked his name, to which he responded with confidence, Go Hyunwoo. She smiled, perhaps out of pride, perhaps out of challenge, and instantly launched herself into the fight. Her first strike came fast and hard. Go Hyunwoo managed to hold out, then retaliated, momentarily pushing her back. But she quickly returned with a burst of mana, slashing at him with greater force. Kim Ho observed the fight carefully. He could tell Go Hyunwoo was struggling. The difference in internal energy was evident. His friend's core was still lacking, not quite on par with an elite. But Kim Ho wasn't ready to give up on him just yet. He wanted to see more. Activating one of his own skills, Kim Ho cast Amplify. A notification popped up. Go Hyunwoo's core rank had been temporarily boosted from E to C. His body was now glowing with a faint blue light, empowered by magic. A new countdown appeared. Duration: 58 seconds cooldown. 59 minutes and 58 seconds. Kim Ho gave quiet encouragement. Just hold out for one more minute. Go Hyunwoo responded with resolve. The duel turned more balanced as he fought with renewed strength, pushing back with each second that ticked down. 19 seconds, 15 seconds, 14 seconds. Meanwhile, Kim Ho returned his focus to the slot machine. He thought to himself about how slot machines were iconic symbols of casinos, often dismissed by players due to their reliance on luck. But what most didn't realize was that some had hidden mechanics. This one, in particular, had a secret pity system. He recalled the logic. Players were given just 5 silver coins. Now, this was his 5th spin. One more remained. With deliberate care, he inserted the 6th coin, the silver he had borrowed. The machine whirred once more. A different item appeared this time, not another water bottle, but something more ominous. A notification appeared in front of him. Dark ice crystal taste. Bitter cold used with extreme caution warning. You could die. Kim Ho stared at it, eyes calm and calculating. He had hit the jackpot. Holding the vial, Kim Ho didn't hesitate. He had what he came for. Just as Han Samin prepared to turn her attention to Kim Ho and attack, Shin stepped in to block the blow, his weapon shattering from the impact. He stood firm, insisting the fight wasn't over yet. Meanwhile, the timer on Amplify ran out. Without waiting for the duel's result, Kim Ho consumed the contents of the dark vial. Pain hit him instantly. He grabbed his throat, the cold flooding through his body. Notifications flashed, frozen status effect applied, then removed and applied again, repeatedly. Go Hyun cried out in alarm, fearing the worst. Han Samin panicked too, warning that the vial was dangerous and could easily kill a student. But moments later, Kim Ho stood, breathing normally, and calmly said he was fine. Both of them stared at him in disbelief. Later, seated in a quiet room, Kim Ho explained with a smile that the vial was basically a kind of elixir that rapidly replenished mana. But internally, he admitted the truth. Dark Ice Crystal was a deadly substance, normally fatal even in small doses. Any normal person would have frozen solid. But thanks to his S-rank trait, elemental resistance, he was immune to the extreme cold. The residual cold still caused minor alerts, but the dangerous energy now coursed harmlessly through his body, empowering him. Go Hyun, now a bit more relaxed, asked whether Han Samin believed Kim Ho's explanation. Kim Ho brushed it off, implying that she probably didn't, but let it go anyway. Go Hyun laughed, grateful for the experience, noting that sparring with someone like Han Samin was worth it. Kim Ho chuckled and acknowledged the help, saying he also owed Go Hyun a silver. Curious, Go Hyun asked if he could see Kim Ho's skill again sometime. Though Kim Ho responded with a warm smile, he internally noted that the skill had a cooldown and limited uses. It wasn't something he could show often. He couldn't reveal everything just yet. Accepting that, Go Hyun nodded with a good-natured grin. Just then, Co Yin, who had been asleep nearby, stirred awake. Kim Ho paid no mind. Instead, he assured Go Hyun that this wouldn't be the last time. They'd have more chances to fight and learn together. As the train neared its destination, Go Hyun looked outside and pointed out that they had almost arrived, the final stop. Kim Ho's thoughts turned serious. This was the island where the Dragon Slayer Academy stood, a land once overrun with criminals and dungeon threats. But everything changed when a legendary Dragon Slayer arrived. He cleared the dungeons, rid the island of its dangers, and founded the academy that now trained the next generation of heroes. Upon arrival, seniors directed the new students with excited voices. Go Hyun commented on their energy, amused. Kim Ho agreed, observing how quickly the place was filling with life. But then, Song Chun-hai, the girl from the disciplinary committee, approached Kim Ho again. She politely asked him to come with her. Inside the student disciplinary committee office, Kim Ho was shown to a seat. As he sat down, he thought quietly to himself. This room, known unofficially as the Room of Truth, had a reputation. Anyone who entered rarely came out the same. Sometime later, Kim Ho sat quietly in front of a falls detector machine, a device used to check for hidden status effects or lingering abnormalities. A committee member nearby commented that they'd heard he had consumed something from the old slot machine. Yet, the scanner revealed nothing unusual. Everything looked perfectly normal. Kim Ho, watching the results, silently acknowledged to himself that it made sense. The frozen status he had endured earlier had already worn off completely. Just then, one of the student inspectors, calm but observant, looked at Kim Ho with slight suspicion. He remarked that, apparently, it hadn't been a forbidden item after all. Still, he had something to say. He laughed faintly, but the undertone was threatening. His words made it clear. It didn't matter whether Kim Ho had known the rules. Ignoring the orders of the Student Discipline Committee was a punishable offense on its own. This was Oh Si-hoon, a third-year student and the head of Dragon Slayer Academy's Discipline Committee. Yet, despite the breach, he chose to be lenient. No harm had come to anyone. And since this was Kim Ho's first violation, he declared that he would let it go, this time. But he warned him not to show up in the committee's office again. Kim Ho bowed respectfully, addressing him with proper honorifics and accepting the outcome. Si-hoon, showing politeness in return, wished him a good semester. Kim Ho responded casually as he exited the room. Once the door closed behind him, Si-hoon turned to the yellow-haired girl beside him, Chun-hai. Noticing the displeasure in her expression, he remarked that she didn't seem happy with how it turned out. He admitted that the more he thought about the situation, the more suspicious it felt. He broke it down logically. If the goal hadn't been to obtain a forbidden item, There was no reason for Kim Ho to have used that malfunctioning slot machine, and even less reason to ingest the result immediately afterward. Chun-Hai, clearly frustrated, expressed her belief that Kim Ho had acquired an illegal skill. If they used the Academy's magical identification tool, they might uncover something unusual in his skill list. Sipping coffee, noted it was a possibility, but raised a valid question. What if nothing showed up? If even the revealed nothing, what would they do then? Si-hoon, now serious, lowered his cup and emphasized the risk. If a deeper search turned up empty, then the implications were far more concerning. Chun-Hai hesitated. She had been eager, but now saw the complexity. She apologized, admitting she had acted carelessly. Si-hoon rose from his seat and gently reassured her that he understood her concerns, but reminded her that things like this required time and patience. As he walked toward the door, he smiled lightly and urged her to get going, reminding her that she would be late for the entrance ceremony if she didn't hurry. The scene shifted to the entrance ceremony. The atmosphere buzzed with excitement. Kim Ho stood among the new students, and his friend Go Hyun cheerfully waved him over, offering a seat nearby. Grateful, Kim Ho accepted with a polite nod. At that moment, a new system notification appeared before him. You attended the entrance ceremony on time. Reward: E-rank weapon selection ticket, 5 silver. Reading it, Kim Ho couldn't help but smile to himself. Even an E-rank weapon was better than nothing, and amusingly, he had just earned back the money he'd spent on the slot machine. Suddenly, a new presence appeared in front of the gathered freshmen. A man in a tracksuit, accompanied by his assistant, walked up to the podium. The crowd immediately recognized him. This was the principal. Some students whispered in disbelief. The man didn't look particularly impressive, but despite his casual appearance, he carried a heavy legacy. He was once the leader of the famed Dragon Slayer team. By tradition, the principal of Dragon Slayer Academy was always a retired frontline hero, one of the most elite individuals in the world. Only one person at a time could hold the title of, even among the countless S-rank warriors. Ordinary in appearance or not, he was a man of immense, unmatched power. Still, the students couldn't resist gossiping. Rumors circulated that the Saintess had rejected his romantic advances not once, but 5 times. The man finally reached the microphone. With a calm voice and authoritative tone, he welcomed the new students and congratulated them on being accepted into the academy. He began his formal speech, recounting the history and purpose of the institution. Dragon Slayer Academy had been founded long ago, with the clear mission of preparing for battle against dragons, and of training those worthy of the title Dragon Slayer. The first hero, he explained, had deliberately chosen the word slay to be part of the Academy's name. It was meant to be a reminder, a challenge. To slay something, after all, means to face it, fight it, and overcome it. You weren't truly an ogre slayer unless you had slain an ogre. And you weren't a dragon slayer until you had slain a dragon. As the principal continued his lengthy speech, both our protagonist and Co Yin exchanged awkward glances, clearly wondering when it would end. In the middle of his serious monologue, the principal himself paused and muttered to the audience about how unexpectedly long it had become. He then returned to his somber tone, emphasizing the brutal nature of being a slayer. Taking lives, he said, was an inescapable part of their path, but he urged them not to turn a blind eye to this reality. Instead, he encouraged each student to question their own purpose. Why do they want to slay? And what are they fighting for? He hoped each of them would find their answer in time. Just as he was about to wrap up with a final message, his assistant rushed in from behind him, seemingly in a panic. At the same time, a student somewhere in the crowd whimpered about a headache, cutting the solemn mood. With a somewhat flustered expression, the principal delivered his final line, wishing all the students success in becoming true heroes during their time at the Dragon Slayer Academy, and officially ended the ceremony. After the speech, Go Hyun, full of energy and excitement, commented about how meaningful the whole experience had been. This surprised the protagonist, who had clearly been bored the entire time. But Go Hyun explained, laughing, that every word of the principal's speech had felt valuable to him, because he was used to hearing similar lectures from his master every day. This revelation left the protagonist slightly dumbfounded, sweating and awkwardly staring at his friend. Then the assistant stepped up to the mic again to issue some important announcements. First, she reminded everyone that the list of forbidden items had been updated. Possessing any of these would not only result in confiscation, but also harsher penalties beyond just losing points. She also informed them that for now, new students would be restricted to the ground floor for any practical evaluations. Entering the lower levels without permission could harm not just the individual, but also their associated sect, magic tower, or guild. This warning caused visible anxiety among some of the students, who were now nervously sweating in their seats. The assistant gave a final stern reminder. One reckless decision out of curiosity could bring consequences for everyone. She urged everyone to follow the rules strictly to avoid disadvantages. With that, the entrance ceremony was officially over, and students were dismissed for dinner, reminded to return to their dorms on time. Right after, Shin Byung suddenly appeared in front of the group, calling out enthusiastically and inviting them to go eat. Go Hyun immediately noticed a wound on Shin Byung's face and asked how he got it. Shin Byung, trying to brush it off, claimed it was just a small incident and told them they should eat well that night. This confused Go Hyun, who pressed for an explanation, to which Shin Byung vaguely replied that tomorrow was the first day of classes, a big day awaited them. That night, back at the boys' dormitory, Go Hyun discovered that he and the protagonist were neighbors. He waved cheerfully and expressed his delight over the coincidence, but the protagonist was clearly not thrilled, replying with dry sarcasm. Go Hyun, still cheerful, told him to rest well. After entering his room, the protagonist removed his jacket and hung it on the door. But instead of going to bed, he made up his mind. He wasn't going to waste this free time just sleeping. Something was clearly brewing in his thoughts. That night, in the quiet of his dorm room, Kim Ho sat cross-legged on his bed, entering a meditative state. Concentration etched across his face. He began forming a glowing blue orb near his lower abdomen, a deliberate act of will and control. He was creating the essential power engine needed to use skills that consume mana or internal energy. Though he had never done this before in real life, he relied on instinct and theory, his mind filled with a clear understanding of the process. With the dark ice crystal he had consumed earlier, his body was brimming with mana, almost overflowing. As he opened his eyes, a steely determination burned within them. He was confident this would work. Meanwhile, just across the hall, Go Hyun-woo was also sitting in quiet meditation within his own room. His thoughts lingered on the battle with Han So-mi, the first real opponent he had encountered since descending the mountain. Both of them had held back somewhat during the match, but he knew that even at full strength, the outcome would have been uncertain. Had Kim Ho not intervened at the precise moment his iron sword broke, he likely would have lost. Since that moment, one word kept echoing in his mind when he thought of Kim Ho, master. Kim Ho carried the kind of calmness that only truly powerful people possessed, and his gaze seemed to pierce through everything. Go Hyun-woo glanced at his sword leaning in the corner of his room, pondering whether he should ask Kim Ho for guidance. But after a moment's hesitation, he shook his head. No, he told himself. Kim Ho was the first true friend he'd made. He didn't want to impose. Smiling faintly, he refocused, determined to push forward with his own strength. The next morning, temporary classroom in the temporary classroom, Seo Yin greeted Kim Ho with a yawn, her words casual and sleepy. Go Hyun-woo, ever cheerful, remarked that he was worried she might have overslept. Kim Ho, watching the interaction, thought to himself that the guess sounded accurate. The student started murmuring, looking around in confusion. The bell had rung, but the podium at the front of the class remained empty. Kim Ho silently observed the situation, mildly unimpressed. Whoever their homeroom teacher was, they clearly didn't value punctuality. Just as the class grew restless, the classroom door opened. A man entered, radiating a sharp, intimidating presence that silenced the room immediately. The students stared, taken aback. He scanned the classroom with a piercing glare before introducing himself bluntly. Lee Soo-dok, their homeroom teacher. To test the students, he pointed to one and demanded to know his nickname. Nervously, the student stammered out a few options until finally blurting the correct one. The Human Butcher. Kim Ho processed the name silently. In a world filled with superhumans who had surpassed the boundaries of ordinary strength, there were those who strayed, villains who used their power selfishly and cruelly. Lee Soo-dok was a man tasked with hunting and executing such criminals. His nickname, while grim, was well-earned. It reflected a career in which he'd killed far more villains than he had spared. Now standing before the class, Lee Soo-dok made it clear he hadn't been thrilled about becoming a teacher. But the principal had asked, and he was a professional. He didn't take any assignment lightly, and this would be no exception. His intensity hung heavy in the air. The message was clear. He would not tolerate failure. The students could feel it too. Some averted their eyes. Lee Soo-dok began writing on the board and continued with the course outline. Grading would be tough. Written exams would account for 30% of their final grade. Attitude and behavior made up another 10%, points that could be lost with poor discipline and could even drag down other grades. That part, he warned, would be under his strict watch. And then came the biggest component, practical exams. These were divided into two categories: dungeon conquest, which involved navigating and clearing dangerous dungeons, and PvP matches, where students would test themselves against one another. Each would make up 30% of the final grade, and all scores would be graded on a curve, meaning it wasn't enough to be good. You had to be better than the person beside you. When no one raised questions, Lee Soo-dok issued his final command. They would head straight to the arena. In the arena, two students clashed in the ring, spells and strikes echoing through the air as the atmosphere pulsed with tension and anticipation. Among the spectators, Shin Byung's eyes lit up as he leaned over the railing with giddy enthusiasm. This was the moment he had been waiting for, the placement exam. 4 first years at Dragon Slayer Academy. This wasn't just another test. It was the event that would shape reputations, rankings, and futures. Beside him, Go Hyun-woo watched with wide eyes, recalling what Shin Byung had hinted at the previous day. Now it made sense. This was the grand-scale event he had spoken about, and it was even more intense than expected. The match structure was explained to the crowd as the next round prepared. In order to expose students to various combat situations, the Academy frequently altered the rules for PvP matches. This time, the format was a brutal setup where duels continued until one combatant's HP hit 0. They became completely incapacitated, or they clearly surrendered. To prevent matches from dragging indefinitely, a 5-minute time limit had been imposed. If no winner emerged by then, the match would be decided as a draw or left to the judge's discretion. Shin Byung was practically bouncing where he stood. He called out that each participant would face 3 random opponents from the first year, and points would be awarded based on victories. His energy made it clear he relished this challenge. Curious, Go Hyun-woo turned to Kim Ho and asked what happened in the event of a draw or a loss. Calmly, Kim Ho explained that in such cases, the result would be 0 points. There were no deductions, but no gains either. Just then, a notification appeared in front of Kim Ho. It hovered clearly in his vision. Goal: earn mid-tier or higher results in the placement exam. Achieve at least 1 win in the PvP placement exam. Place in the top 50% in the Dungeon Conquest exam reward. Slot +1. Kim Ho's thoughts sharpened as he reviewed the requirements. The subquest was straightforward. 1 win in the PvP match and a solid performance in the dungeon segment would be enough to clear it. But his focus wasn't on the reward just yet. What mattered more now was what the placement exam truly offered information. It was the perfect opportunity to study the other students, to gauge their abilities, and to identify those who might one day grow into top-tier combatants, or who possessed unique skills he could later. Then came the announcement from the arena's loudspeaker. Kim Ho, Hong Yun-hwa, stepped forward. The crowd stirred. Go Hyun-woo turned toward Kim Ho with bright eyes and called out encouragingly, wishing him luck with genuine admiration. Kim Ho stepped into the ring, coming face to face with his first opponent, a red-haired girl standing confidently, radiating fiery energy. She studied him sharply. From the insignia on his uniform, she quickly noted that he wasn't affiliated with any major tower, at least not one she recognized. Her eyes narrowed. She knew of the Ruby Tower's reputation, experts in flame-based magic with unmatched destructive force and superior battlefield control. She was proud to represent it. If she wanted to raise her profile in the academy, she needed to defeat someone with a reputation, or at least someone who looked competent. To her, Kim Ho didn't seem to be either. Her gaze dropped to the staff in his hand, and her internal critique deepened. It was an E-rank Earth staff, the kind used to slightly amplify defensive or Earth element magic. In her opinion, even most beginner mages wouldn't bother with something so plain. She immediately categorized him as a support-type caster, likely lacking mobility and dependent on long-range defense. Her assumptions narrowed. He wasn't from the Emerald Tower, and he didn't look like an Earth element user either. That left support magic as the most likely explanation. Judging by the staff size and build, she pegged him as a stationary type, what they called a turret caster. Just as the announcer began the countdown, Kim Ho was already mentally assessing her. From her bearing and style, he recognized the signs: flame specialization, high damage potential, strong area control. She matched the meta patterns he remembered well from before. Calmly, he smiled inwardly. He already had a plan. "Sorry, but you'll have to play along with my act for the next 5 minutes." The countdown ended. "Start." She didn't hesitate. A powerful spell activated at her fingertips, fire erupting from her staff in a brilliant explosion aimed directly at Kim Ho. The heat surged across the arena. Sparks crackled. From the audience, gasps followed the display. Spectators marveled at her cast speed and raw power. Someone pointed out the unique shimmer that accompanied her spell, hinting at specialized casting techniques taught only in the Ruby Tower. But when the smoke cleared, they saw something unexpected. Kim Ho was still standing. His health bar remained untouched. The scoreboard showed full HP for both fighters. The red-haired girl's confidence faltered. That couldn't be right. She hadn't expected a one-hit knockout, but this? Her attack had made no impact at all. Completely ineffective. How? Confusion began to overtake her aggression. And Kim Ho? He stood calmly in the settling dust, unreadable, watching her with eyes that now gleamed with quiet control. Seeing her powerful spell fail, Hong Yunhua stared at Kim Ho, confused. The health bars above them still read 100% for both. She questioned whether he had used a spell to nullify her attack. Not wasting time, she activated another spell while analyzing Kim Ho's calm stance. She believed that if her previous attack was neutralized, this new one would be much harder to counter. Kim Ho, noticing the magic circle forming beneath him, prepared mentally. He wasn't planning to dodge. He was waiting for the perfect moment to counter. From her perspective, Yunhua grew uneasy. Sweat formed on her brow. Kim Ho hadn't moved an inch. His expression showed no concern. That stillness unsettled her. Frustrated by his confidence, she shouted at him and unleashed a column of fire toward him, determined to break through whatever defense he was relying on. The audience reacted with awe and panic. Her flames erupted across the arena, and many praised her for living up to the reputation of the Ruby Tower. But when the smoke cleared, Kim Ho remained standing, unharmed. She was visibly shaken. Her strongest attack had done nothing. Internally, she questioned how her magic, as someone trained at the Ruby Tower, could be so easily brushed off. Realizing her usual spells wouldn't work, she prepared to use her trump card. Before she could act, Kim Ho made his move. He launched a magic attack, Hummingbird. She narrowly dodged the first strike, but the spell twisted midair and came back from behind. It wasn't over. As the spell connected, a notification appeared before Kim Ho. Paralysis status effect applied. He looked at her and calmly ended the match, suggesting she conserve her remaining spells for later battles. She tried to protest, but he reminded her that there were more matches ahead. Her best option was to hold back now. The match concluded. The announcer declared her defeat. In the crowd, students whispered in disbelief. They questioned how he had taken those attacks without injury, how he used such a technique, and who he even was. Kim Ho quietly took in their reactions. He had learned more than expected from this one fight, and he knew he had to stay cautious. Then, unexpectedly, his name was called again for the next match. He reacted with quiet frustration. There was barely any time to rest. Among the students, someone recognized his next opponent, Song Chun-hai, a new student from the Topaz Tower who had already joined the disciplinary committee. As he turned, she was already standing behind him. With a smirk, she said facing him was a stroke of luck. There was something she wanted to test. Kim Ho, showing no reaction, looked toward the teacher and announced he would withdraw. Both the teacher and Chun-hai were surprised and asked why. He casually rubbed his head and replied that he wasn't feeling well. It would be difficult to continue fighting. The teacher advised him to take the opportunity to raise his score, but Kim Ho confirmed his decision and asked for the third match to be marked as a loss too. The teacher acknowledged the request. Chun-Hai looked at him, disappointed and angry. She muttered to herself that a true fighter is always prepared, quoting her grandfather's belief that only those who never give up deserve to win. Kim Ho reflected silently. Her words reminded him of his own grandfather, the Thunder Monarch. He thought about the contrast. Chun-Hai was trying to live up to that legacy. As for himself, he didn't feel any pressure to follow anyone's path. Even so, he admitted to himself it wasn't bad advice. Not that he intended to follow it. Our protagonist began walking away from the arena, clearly uninterested in continuing. His tone was indifferent, as if he'd already made peace with the outcome. He casually dismissed the match, claiming it wasn't for him and telling the girl to consider it her win. The girl, hearing this, didn't hide her disappointment. She turned her back to him, clearly let down, and muttered how foolish she felt for ever having any hope in him. Just as he was about to leave, he paused and turned back, making it seem like he had something else to say. Curious, the girl asked what it was. With a slight smile, he made a cheeky request, asking her to send him a dessert coupon, saying he'd be waiting. That pushed her over the edge, and she clenched her teeth in frustration. Meanwhile, the announcer moved on to the next match, calling out the names: Song Chun-Hai and Yang Ji-hong. A red-haired boy, armed with a spear, seemed eager for the challenge. Confidently, he declared that since his opponent was from the Topaz Tower, he expected a worthy fight. But the girl didn't even acknowledge him. Trying to get her attention, he asked if she was ready, only to be cut off mid-sentence. Before the announcer could even fully say start, she struck instantly with lightning, overwhelming him in a single move. The scoreboard confirmed the result: Song Chun-Hai 100%, Yang Ji-hong 0%. Watching from the stands, Shin Byung, sitting next to our protagonist, looked shocked. He commented on how badly the boy seemed to be burned. Our protagonist acknowledged it with a calm remark. Shin Byung, realizing how things could have gone, mentioned it was probably a smart move to have forfeited earlier. The protagonist simply agreed. After the match, the girl turned back to the stands and glared at our protagonist with burning eyes. Shin Byung caught the look and nudged our protagonist, noting the intensity of her presence. He confidently stated she must be the Thunder Monarch's granddaughter, pointing out her flashy performance. Our protagonist kept his eyes on her from the stands, satisfied. It was exactly what he wanted. But in the background, whispers began to spread among the students. They mocked him for forfeiting, assuming he'd chicken out because he didn't want to face someone as powerful as Song Chun-Hai. Some even questioned his previous win, calling it pure luck and labeling him a coward. Yet instead of being bothered, he smiled. Their gossip didn't hurt him. It validated his plan. The reputation of being a coward who got lucky against the Ruby Tower was just what he wanted. Then, the announcer called the next match for Song Chun-Hai again. Shin Byung, still glued to the arena, turned to our protagonist and remarked that the next match was already starting. He wondered aloud who would be unfortunate enough to face her this time. We see Seo Yin standing confidently in the arena, holding a pair of guns in her hands, clearly ready for combat. Nearby, Shin Byung, without even turning to look at the protagonist, starts sweating as he reacts in surprise to what he's seeing. He didn't expect Seo Yin to be a gunner. It completely caught him off guard. The protagonist also admits he just learned that as well, finding the situation more intriguing now. Shin Byung quickly recalls that gunners typically have an advantage when fighting mages. With that in mind, he starts to wonder if Seo Yin might actually win this match against Song Chun-Hai. But the protagonist, staying calm, reminds him they can't be sure yet and need to wait and see how things play out. Still, Shin Byung is optimistic. He believes if Seo Yin just sticks to the basics, there's not much chance she'll lose. The protagonist, feeling a bit more competitive, playfully suggests placing a bet on the match, 5 silver coins. Shin Byung immediately agrees with a big smile, sealing the deal. The scoreboard lights up, showing Song Chun-Hai versus Seo Yin. 100%, 100%. Both fighters prepare themselves. As soon as the announcer gives the signal, Seo Yin launches her first attack, firing her gun. But Song Chun-hai calmly blocks the bullets with a web-like shield formed by her mana, effortlessly neutralizing the attack. Shin Byung, caught off guard, reacts with alarm, surprised that the bullets were blocked so easily. Meanwhile, the protagonist expected this outcome. He starts analyzing the fight internally, concluding that Song Chun-hai has significantly more mana at her disposal. Even an E-rank tool like the Hummingbird seems to gain D-rank power in her hands. Seo Yin doesn't back down and attacks again. In response, Chun-hai sends out her Hummingbird, and a fierce exchange begins. The two clash repeatedly, but eventually, one of the Hummingbirds manages to hit Seo Yin. The impact causes her to become paralyzed, and she lets out a grunt of pain. Seeing this, Shin Byung panics. He knows if that hit had landed just a little more directly, it might have ended the match right there. But the protagonist stays composed, arms crossed, noting that although Seo Yin managed to dodge, her movements have clearly slowed due to the electrocution. He's confident now. Once someone gets shocked like that, the follow-up attack is almost guaranteed to hit. He firmly believes Chun-hai is going to win with ease. But then, unexpectedly, Seo Yin pulls out a smoke grenade and throws it. Both Chun-hai and the protagonist are taken by surprise. The sudden appearance of the smoke grenade causes confusion. Shin Byung, getting excited, quickly jots something down in his notebook. He praises the move as a smart decision. According to him, regular bombs would have been blocked anyway, but a smoke grenade changes the dynamic. He's thrilled now, saying this is exactly the kind of moment where a gunner's true strength comes to life. Inside the smoke, Song Chun-hai struggles to see clearly. The confusion gives Seo Yin the opening she needs. A single bullet silently cuts through the smoke and lands a clean hit on Chun-hai's shoulder, catching her completely off guard. The girl glanced back at Seo Yin while being carried away, thinking to herself that although she had managed to avoid a direct hit using a magic barrier, the impact was still strong enough to knock her off balance. At that very moment, Seo Yin was right behind her, silently raising a gun. Sensing her presence, the girl could feel the danger escalating and realized that if this kept up, things could get serious very quickly. Watching from the sidelines, Shin Byung was surprised. He noted how extravagant this new student must be, using an invisibility cloak right from the start. Clearly, she had some serious resources behind her. Seo Yin moved swiftly and decisively to reposition herself for another attack. Observing this, Shin Byung commented that switching to a rifle had also been a smart move. A bullet then zipped past the girl's neck, missing by mere strands of hair. The scoreboard displayed the current state of the match. Song Chun-hai at 85%, Seo Yin at 88%, with 2 minutes and 13 seconds left on the clock. As the girl looked toward the source of the shot, sweat formed on her face. She realized she couldn't just keep defending and needed to take action. Again, Seo Yin appeared behind her, ready to attack. The girl quickly threw up a barrier and tried to read the direction of the incoming magic bullets. The moment the bullet barely grazed the barrier, she spun around and activated a skill, deciding it was the perfect time to strike back. Seo Yin immediately jumped upward to evade, but the girl pointed at her midair and declared she had her. This time, Seo Yin couldn't avoid the incoming attack. A hummingbird materialized and struck her with an electric shock on contact. The scoreboard updated again. Song Chun-hai at 85%, Seo Yin dropped to 68%, and the match timer hit midnight. Watching the conclusion, the protagonist nodded to himself, thinking it went just as he expected. He turned his attention to the yellow-haired girl and acknowledged that she clearly had no equals among the freshmen. Still, Seo Yin holding her off until the time ran out was impressive in itself. Shin Byung, accepting his loss, handed over 5 silver coins with a sigh. But before letting go, he grabbed the protagonist's arm and, sweating nervously, suggested another bet under the same terms. The protagonist, looking serious, asked him plainly if he was addicted to gambling and why he couldn't stop. Shin Byung pointed at the arena, insisting the next match would change the protagonist's mind. Go Hyenwoo's opponent, he explained with excitement, was none other than the first king's disciple, Jo Byok. With a grin, he asked who the protagonist would bet on this time. The protagonist replied matter-of-factly that the first king's disciple would likely win. Shin Byung, eager for a chance, said he'd bet on the other side and teased that the protagonist was being tough on his own friend. Crossing his arms and watching the arena, the protagonist clarified that he never said Go Hyun-woo would lose. Confused, Shin Byung asked what he meant by that. The protagonist just smiled confidently and told him he'd find out soon enough. From inside the arena, Go Hyun-woo glanced toward the stands, catching sight of the protagonist. A thought passed through his mind. Kim Hyung is watching. With that in mind, he unsheathed his sword, stepping forward with determination. He wanted to show a clear victory, something meaningful, but he knew it wouldn't come easily. Facing Jo Byok, Go Hyun-woo urged him to draw the sword on his back. But Jo Byok calmly responded that it wasn't yet time to use it. Go Hyun-woo acknowledged this with understanding, but warned him that he wouldn't be going easy regardless. The two squared off, their swords at the ready. The scoreboard displayed Go Hyun-woo versus Jo Byok, 100%, 100%. The announcer called for the match to begin. In a blink, Jo Byok launched himself forward and was suddenly right in front of Go Hyun-woo. With smooth precision, he followed up with a palm strike. Go Hyun-woo reacted in time, blocking with both hands on his sword, but the sheer force sent him sliding several meters backward. Go Hyun-woo glanced at his trembling sword and realized that even though he'd managed to reduce the impact, the force behind the strike was overwhelming. Basic attacks won't be enough, he concluded. As Jo Byok came charging again, Go Hyun-woo made up his mind. I'll end this in a single blow with this technique. He activated a refined move, the blue sword technique. The two closed in once more, clashing with all they had. Their powers met in a brief but intense moment of force. The result, Go Hyun-woo's sword shattered from the impact. Without facing his opponent directly, he quietly admitted defeat, saying he could no longer continue. At the same time, a wound opened on Jo Byok's shoulder. He acknowledged it calmly and said he'd look forward to their next match. With that, the match ended, and the two fighters disappeared from the arena. Watching from above, the protagonist thought to himself. As expected, the iron sword couldn't withstand it. He recalled seeing Go Hyun-woo's swordsmanship on the train earlier and had briefly hoped otherwise. But reality affirmed what he suspected. Go Hyun-woo treated severing swords like disposable tools. Beside him, Shin Byung held his head in disbelief. Sweating nervously, he asked how the protagonist had predicted the outcome so accurately. In response, the protagonist quietly grabbed his shoulder and lightly scolded him for talking too much. Then, with a smile, he held out his hand, requesting the agreed-upon 5 silver coins. Shin Byung, flustered, admitted he didn't have the money. But the protagonist calmly offered an alternative. He didn't necessarily need cash. Shin Byung asked with a bit of hope what he could offer instead. The protagonist simply pointed to his notebook and told him he could pay with information. Just then, the announcer's voice echoed. The raid placement exam will continue after lunch. Everyone, gather at the dungeon building and don't be late. All right, dismissed. Sometime later, the two sat on a grass field outside, eating lunch. The air was calm, and Shin Byung took a bite of his sandwich before looking over at the protagonist. Who will win at the end? He asked casually. Without missing a beat, the protagonist replied, let's talk after you finish eating. Shin Byung chuckled and then leaned forward. Sorry. So what information do you need? With a curious but thoughtful look, the protagonist replied, just tell me about the promising talents from the 4 great factions. Shin Byung, grinning playfully, replied, well, all right. I'm overflowing with top-tier information. Then, turning a bit more serious, he began explaining, to your information, the 4 great factions at Dragon Slayer Academy, besides official groups like the Disciplinary Committee, are major powerhouses. He listed them one by one. Miram Alliance Guild, Union Magic Tower Society, Knight Order, among them, if we're talking about the real promising talents. He started going through his notebook. Grandson of the Sword Saint, Moyong Hyeonsong, Miram Alliance. Moyong Jun, also Miram Alliance. Hong Yunhua, the likely next head of the Ruby Magic Tower Society. Park Nari, the druid who walks around with a cat on her shoulder, Guild Union. And one more, someone who doesn't stand out because he's hiding his skills, Lee Song-hyun, the son of the Sword Master, Knight Order. Finishing his list, Shin Byung tapped his notebook and said, Well, these are about the only ones to call uniquely strong. The protagonist simply responded, they are definitely a stacked lineup. Shin then looked up again and asked, hey, by the way, where did Hyenwoo go? But then he paused, suddenly feeling something in his pocket. His face changed. All right, the club presentation, he exclaimed in panic. I completely forgot. He jumped up, waving as he ran off. I have to go first. Sorry, the protagonist, wiping a bit of sweat from his brow, replied, yeah, see you later. Now alone with Seo Yin in the field, he glanced at her quietly. She seemed downcast. Maybe it's because this is the first bond I've made in this world, he thought, but it bothers me seeing her like that. Then, trying to break the silence, he said, hey, about the cookie I dropped on the train yesterday, checking something in the system, he continued, Song Cheon-hai sent me a dessert coupon. Since it was your cookie, you have a share in this too. He summoned a cake and set it in front of her. Here, let's eat together. Seo Yin accepted it with a simple thanks. Then, after a pause, she suddenly asked, Looking at him curiously, she asked, why do you think? I lost to Song Cheon-hai. The protagonist answered evenly. It's hard to break through a magic barrier with a magic bullet at this level. With such superior magic power, it's normal for her to be that strong. Then he held something up, adding, but if you strengthen the magic bullet through mana training, it becomes a different story. Seo Yin looked puzzled. Mana training? Why is that necessary? The protagonist looked surprised. What? No way. You've never done it before. She shook her head. Yeah. Stunned, he asked again. Then how did you even create a magic bullet? I never learned the skill, she answered casually. The protagonist was momentarily speechless. Genius, he thought. The magic bullet skill is supposed to be basic for a gunner. Has she been landing shots just by instinct? She's causing trouble without even knowing mana training. In that case, with renewed energy, he offered, if you're okay with it, I can make some time to help you out. She gave a small nod. Okay. Smiling, he said, once you train your mana and learn the skill, things will get a bit easier. Well, you scored well. Let's go. Time for the placement exam. Then suddenly, the scene shifts to the dungeon wing. In front of the dungeon portal, the teacher gathers all the students and begins addressing them with a serious tone. He informs everyone that the conquest exam is about to begin. The exam will take place inside the dungeon portal behind him, and it will follow 2 specific rules. As he speaks, a panel appears displaying the first rule. Students will earn points based on the number of monsters they defeat within a 10-minute time limit. The more monsters they defeat, and the higher their quality, the more points they will get. The second rule is that it's a rank-locked zone. Everyone's abilities will be equalized to F rank. This includes their equipment, skills, and traits. The teacher emphasizes that even their score will be locked at F rank, meaning they'll have to put in real effort to climb out of it. He warns them not to get sloppy with mana usage. Poor management could cost them the entire exam. After giving the instructions, the teacher starts calling students one by one to enter the dungeon. A bit later, as some students begin to return from their turns, the teacher watches their exhausted faces and weak performance. Disappointed, he quietly scoffs at their complaints, finding them pathetic. Internally, he notes how terrible their results are and struggles to believe how low the standard is. Out of all the participants, only 2 students manage to stand out. Han Somi, who earns 928 points and ranks first, and Choi Jong-pil, who manages to hit the top 20%. Even with those 2 performing well, the teacher already feels the headache coming on. He knows it's going to be tough figuring out how to train the rest. He then awkwardly announces the next 2 students, Seo Yin and Kim Ho. As they walk toward the gate, our protagonist calmly advises Seo Yin to use a rifle for the test. He suggests that if she starts struggling with mana control, she should focus on headshots when monsters get close. She nods quietly in acknowledgement, taking his advice seriously. From the side, a yellow-haired girl from the disciplinary committee observes them. Seeing how calmly and confidently the protagonist is offering advice, she's surprised. In her thoughts, she questions how someone who doesn't even show a glimmer of nervousness is able to act so composed. As the gate to the dungeon loomed ahead, the protagonist turned to Seo Yin and gave her a brief farewell before stepping through. As soon as he entered, a notification appeared in front of him. entering the fixed zone. The scene shifted instantly. He found himself in the middle of a dense forest, one he seemed familiar with. He noted to himself that it had been a while since he last visited this place. A system announcement followed, confirming that all skills, traits, and equipment ranks were being reset. Opening his inventory, he made a mental note to use this opportunity to assess his current capabilities. With a determined mindset, he got ready to move. The countdown timer appeared, 10 minutes remaining. Right as the exam began, a goblin rushed toward him. Without hesitation, he swung his staff and sent it flying. He recalled how monster spawns in Mist Forest were random, but certain patterns still remained predictable. Based on where the goblin had appeared, he recognized the situation immediately. It was Pattern C. Using that knowledge, he anticipated the next monster's location. He retrieved a dagger, targeted a weak spot, and struck one clean hit, and the monster was defeated. Realizing the staff wouldn't be necessary, he stored it away and noted how weapons were scattered throughout the area, easy to borrow from the monsters themselves. New enemies appeared. This time, he focused on increasing his score. With 7 minutes and 2 seconds remaining, he sensed 2 trolls behind a wall. While preparing, he remembered not to save the run's replay. Without even looking, he threw his axe toward the trolls, eliminating them with precision. He then quickly deleted the playback data to avoid unnecessary attention. Satisfied, he reviewed his current score. 683 points in just 3 minutes. More than enough. He had already cleared the subquest requirements. A notification appeared, confirming his progress. Placement exam ranked in the top 50% reward. Plus 1 skill slot. Clicking the panel, he decided he'd done enough. Pushing further might only draw suspicion. It was time to wrap it up. As he exited the gate, Co Yin was just returning from her own trial. He greeted her, casually asking how it went. She admitted it was difficult, but he noted that her score didn't seem too bad. Unbeknownst to them, the teacher nearby had been observing. He remembered this student, Kim Ho, as the one who forfeited during PvP. Dismissing him as weak, he expected another poor showing. Until he checked the scoreboard. He was stunned. Kim Ho had reached mid-high tier rankings in such a short time, an unheard of result. Sweat forming on his brow, the teacher made a silent decision. He would need to keep an eye on this one. Calling out the next participant, he shouted for Go Hyun-woo. As Hyun-woo approached the gate, Kim Ho gave him a calm warning to be careful. Hyun-woo nodded, saying he would return. Kim Ho then turned his attention to the leaderboard. At the top stood Lee Sung-hyun, 951 points, first Han Somi, 928 points, second Moyong-jun, 903 points, third. Recognizing the names, he reflected. Moyong-jun, the Sword Saint's grandson, was known for his talent. If those were the standards, Hyun-woo might still be in the running. Then, unexpectedly, the board updated again. Lee Sung-hyun, 951 points, second Han Somi, 928 points, third Moyong-jun, 903 points, fourth. Someone had taken first place. And Kim Ho wasn't surprised. When Go Hyun-woo finally stepped out of the gate, the students around them murmured in shock and curiosity. Many recognized him from an earlier match. Astonished by his score, they questioned how 1,000 points was even possible. Kim Ho, however, simply smiled and praised him. Hyun-woo, grateful, attributed his success to the rest Kim Ho allowed him after the PvP round. Still smiling, Kim Ho replied lightly, hinting that maybe he was reading a little too much into it. And at the same time, 2 people were arguing nearby, and one of them scoffed, saying, what's with that guy? Even the coward is pushing into high ranks now. The other one replied, right? He even forfeited the PvP exam. Hearing that, Go Hyun glanced toward them angrily, but our protagonist stopped him and said, forget it. Just ignore them. Go Hyun, sweating slightly, looked at him and said, but really, Kim Hyun. But our protagonist just winked at him and said, I'm fine. Don't worry. Hearing that, Go Hyun calmed down and nodded. If that's your decision, Kim Hyun. Then our protagonist looked at the scoreboard and asked, so, is it over now? Go Hyun replied, not yet. Chun-Hai's score hasn't shown up. Our protagonist suddenly turned toward the gate, thinking, so it's not over yet. Inside the gate, the yellow-haired girl from the disciplinary committee was fighting monsters with frustration. She glanced at the goblin and thought, I expected their power to drop, but All it did was slightly slow their movements. That's it. Then she remembered what our protagonist said to Seo Hyun and thought, if mana control gets tough, just go for headshots on anything that gets close. She paused, realizing something, and thought again. I hate to admit it, but what he said earlier popped into my head. With limited mana, there's a cap to wide area. In that case, focus all the mana into a heavy-hitting blow. And just like that, she instantly defeated the monster in the dungeon. When she came out of the gate, her score popped up. Song Chunhai, 571 points, 47%. She glanced slightly toward our protagonist, her face blushing, and thought, TCH, why did it have to be revealed in front of everyone? Didn't even get a good score. But suddenly, the teacher interrupted all the students and said, that completes the placement exam. Step up and don't be late for your classes. Then he walked away and added, that's all. Dismissed. Sometime later in a quiet room, someone inside said, yes, come in. As the teacher entered, the man asked, what brings you here? Placing his hand on the table, the teacher said in a firm tone, I'd like to check the replay from Kim Ho's conquest exam in class 1 to 3. The man, surprised, said, showing interest in a student for once. The teacher responded flatly, doesn't matter. Just show me the replay file. The man panicked a little and said, why yes, sir. Let me look it up. But after checking, he turned and said, Kim Ho's replay isn't saved. It can't be viewed. The teacher asked, then does that mean there's no access record either? The man, still shocked, replied, if it's that, we can check the dungeon access log. And as the teacher looked at the files with a sharp expression, he thought, as I thought, my hunch was right, this guy. He deleted it on purpose. After that, Lee Soo-dok checked Kim Ho's record again on the academy computer. As he studied the data, he realized Kim Ho had deliberately erased something. At the pace Kim Ho was going, he would have easily surpassed 2,000 points in just 10 minutes. The computer display showed his name, the location as Mist Forest, the timestamps 13 hours, 31 minutes, and 2 seconds, and 13 hours, 24 minutes, and 28 seconds, along with 683 points and a 38% completion. Lee Soo-dok stared at the screen again, questioning why Kim Ho was hiding his abilities. He wondered if there was a deeper reason. In his thoughts, he recalled that at Dragon Slayer Academy, enemies were just as common as allies. Servants of the dragon and apostles of the evil god were known threats. And if one of them had infiltrated the academy, the only wise course would be to immediately prepare countermeasures. At that moment, his attendant asked whether they should inform the principal. Lee Soo-dok considered it, but quickly decided otherwise. He told the attendant they should observe a little longer. If any information leaked without solid evidence, Kim Ho would only hide his true power even deeper. He resolved that if Kim Ho truly posed a threat, he would eventually reveal his fangs. For now, Lee Soo-dok would keep watching him closely. Meanwhile, at the Academy's internal cafe at 3:27 p.m., Kim Ho placed his order. At the same time, Go Hyun-woo also ordered the same drink, mentioning that he had just started to get interested in coffee. Seo Yin, who was with them, excused herself to go find a seat. Kim Ho dismissed her remark, saying he and Go Hyun-woo would simply drink it themselves. After collecting their drinks, Kim Ho and Go Hyun-woo sat down together. As Kim Ho raised his glass, he told Hyun-woo to take out the catalog they had received after class earlier. Hyun-woo pulled out the thin booklet, confirming it was the one Kim Ho meant. Looking through it, Hyun-woo admitted that most of its contents were difficult to understand. Kim Ho explained that this was exactly why he had suggested they sit down over coffee, to focus only on the important parts for now. He then instructed Hyun-woo to first take out his student ID. When Hyun-woo looked at it, the card displayed his information. Go Hyun-woo, Year 1, Class 3, with a total of 3,069 points. Go Hyun-woo explained to Kim Ho that there was a new system called points. The number displayed on the student ID represented available points, which functioned as a type of currency within Dragon Slayer Academy. Kim Ho, referring to the guidebook, added that points were mainly earned through dungeon conquests like the one earlier. They could be spent on items or facilities, but there was another important function as well. He reminded Hyun-woo about the message that had appeared just before leaving the dungeon regarding a feature called replay. Hyun-woo, startled by the mention, recalled that he had accepted something without much thought. Kim Ho clarified that what had been recorded at that time could be purchased, and not only that, students could even buy another student's replay. When Hyun-woo checked the listings, he was shocked to find a replay of Han Samin's dungeon strategy. Kim-ho pointed out that since Hyun-woo was a scorer, his own replays were likely selling rapidly as well. Hyun-woo was impressed, realizing he had gained quite a lot in such a short amount of time. However, Kim-ho cautioned him that having one's replay sold widely wasn't entirely beneficial. Hyun-woo quickly understood, recognizing that others could analyze weaknesses and develop countermeasures against them. Kim-ho admitted that he had managed to secure first place in the dungeon thanks to the fixed zone rules, but in mana battles, his weak core would eventually be exposed. Still, he considered the risk worthwhile given the amount of points earned. He then explained the value of the mana training room available in the training center. It was a facility where points could be used to strengthen mana. More importantly, there is a special training room with denser mana than the standard ones, which allowed inner strength to be built much faster. Hyun-woo was stunned to learn such a place existed, but Kim-ho noted that there were strict entry conditions. Hyun-woo correctly guessed that the condition was related to points. Kim-ho confirmed, stating that access cost 500 points for 6 hours of use. Hyun-woo calculated that if he entered once a day, he would quickly run out of points. Kim-ho reminded him that spending them all there would prevent him from using them elsewhere when needed. Hyun-woo considered alternatives and asked if there was another way. Kim-ho explained that there was indeed an alternative, a season pass. This was only given to top clubs, and in order to obtain one, Hyun-woo would need to take Moyong-jun's spot in the swordsmanship club. Hyun-woo, nervous about the idea, admitted that with his current skills it seemed impossible, so for now the best option was to use his points efficiently. At that point, Kim-ho told him not to worry, as he would obtain the pass for him, on one condition. In return, he asked Hyun-woo for a promise. Curious, Hyun-woo asked what he wanted. Kim-ho revealed his request. Once Hyun-woo grew stronger, the two of them would enter the deep dungeon together. Unlike the mist forest they had experienced earlier, this dungeon could be life-threatening depending on the circumstances. Kim-ho asked him directly if he would accept. Go Hyun-woo accepted Kim-ho's proposal without hesitation. As a warrior, he had always longed for strength, and if Kim-ho was willing to show him the path, he could not refuse. He declared that he was ready to stake his life on it and wholeheartedly accepted the proposal, addressing Kim-ho as his elder. Kim-ho told him to focus on training inside the special training room for now, instructing him not to hesitate. He promised to secure the season pass within 2 weeks. Hyun-woo agreed, finding 2 weeks to be a reasonable timeline, and said he would wait with that in mind. Kim-ho then raised his voice, stating that while Hyun-woo grew stronger, he himself would go make a deal. Shortly after, Kim-ho arrived at Workshop 4. He greeted the senior working there, introducing himself and expressing interest in a magical engineering club. The senior, busy with his work, asked who he was and dismissed him, telling him that Workshop 1 handled such matters. When Kim-ho explained that he had already visited Workshop 1 and was directed here, the senior reluctantly told him to just take a quick look without disturbing him, since he was busy. Kim-ho politely agreed and promised not to be a bother. Observing Kim-ho's demeanor, the senior quickly evaluated him, estimating his magical engineering skills to be around B rank. Kim-ho then activated his skill, Copy, targeting the senior. A system notification confirmed his success. His first goal was achieved, and the target skill was registered into his slot. Magical engineering at rank B was successfully copied, filling the second of his 2 available slots alongside Hummingbird at rank E. With that secured, Kim-ho turned his attention to his next goal within Workshop. Searching around, he eventually found what he was looking for, a 10 by 10 by 10 cube blueprint. Showing it to the senior, he asked if it seemed valuable. The senior dismissed it, explaining that although it had high specifications, no one was capable of making it, so it was useless. Kim-ho, feigning casual interest, asked if he could have it since it looked interesting, offering to trade instead of taking it for free. He presented a purchase notification, a heat catalyst reagent worth 1,000 points. He suggested exchanging it for the blueprint. The senior considered it. While the reagent wasn't an extraordinary item, in magical engineering, it was always useful to have more of them. Deciding it was worth it, the senior agreed, but warned Kim-ho not to tell anyone. He handed over the blueprint in exchange. Kim-ho thanked him sincerely, while the senior quietly celebrated saving 1,000 points. Kim-ho, however, smirked inwardly. To him, the reagent had been trash, and selling it for 1,000 points was practically a cause for celebration. Still, he questioned whether the blueprint was truly worthless. As he examined it further, a system notification appeared. He had triggered a subquest titled Mysterious Cube. The description explained that he had discovered a highly unusual blueprint in a magical engineering workshop. The quest objective required scoring mid-tier or above in the placement test, and the reward was the unlocking of a follow-up quest. Kim Ho scoffed at the task, thinking the quest was practically trash since no one would go through such hassle. But then he noticed the final reward, an S-rank item called the Cube of Life. For someone like him, who had raised countless S-rank heroes, the prize was more than worthwhile. Later, at the training center's mana training room, Kim Ho reflected on the blueprint. He realized that he could construct the item without even following the entire quest chain. He activated his amplification ability, temporarily boosting his magical engineering rank from B to S for a duration of 59 seconds, with a cooldown of 58 minutes and 58 seconds. With this power active, he began working on the mysterious cube. The system displayed the countdown of his boosted duration as he carefully manipulated the design. As he continued, he calculated that, at his current pace, it would take approximately 3 days to finish the construction. After another round of work on the cube, Kim Ho saw his amplification effect expire. The duration dropped to 0. His magical engineering rank decreased from S back to B, and the cooldown timer showed 58 minutes and 54 seconds remaining. He realized again how tight the 1-minute time frame was. Without the boost, his lowered rank meant he couldn't manipulate the cube at all. Acknowledging this, he decided to alternate between training and crafting. Until the cooldown ended, he would refine his core through meditation, then return to working on the cube when amplification was available again. This became his cycle, 1 hour of meditation followed by 1 minute of cube work, repeating over and over. Each time he activated amplification, his magical engineering rank temporarily rose from B to S, allowing him to continue progress. Determined, he reminded himself that he had to finish the Cube of Life before Friday, as an important event was scheduled to occur on that day. Working through the night, he eventually noticed morning had already arrived. Accepting that, he prepared for the school day. Upon arriving at class, he greeted Co Yin, noting she was there early. She explained she had simply woken up early. He asked if Go Hyunwoo had arrived yet, but before an answer came, Co Yin handed him a pack of cookies. Surprised but appreciative, he thanked her. The dinosaur-shaped cookies caught his attention, and he commented that they were cool. Shortly after, Go Hyunwoo entered the classroom, greeting both Kim Ho and Co Yin. Kim Ho turned and remarked that Hyunwoo was a bit late before asking how the special training room had been. Hyunwoo explained that it was the first time he had felt his inner strength grow so quickly. With just a little more effort, he believed he could break through a wall. Kim Ho was satisfied with this answer and assured him that he would provide the season pass as soon as possible. Hyunwoo expressed his thanks. At that moment, Lee Sudok entered the classroom and called for silence. He instructed everyone to take their seats and then made an announcement. From that day onward, battles would be held in the arena. The time limit for each battle had been increased to 10 minutes, so students would need to manage their movements carefully. Furthermore, all first years were required to complete at least 3 matches that week. Any student who failed to participate would see their score reduced. With that, he ended the announcement. Hearing this, Kim Ho thought to himself that the moment he had been waiting for had finally arrived. He was determined to win his upcoming battles without fail. As he checked the match listings, a system notification appeared before him. A subquest titled Week 1 PvP Matches was issued. The objective was to complete 3 PvP matches, with 0 of 3 currently recorded. The deadline was set until midnight on the final day of the week, and the reward would be scaled depending on the number of victories achieved. Kim Ho felt a surge of excitement as the matches approached. He was certain he would win this time. With determination, he turned to Go Hyunwoo, touched his arm, and urged him to head to the arena immediately. He reasoned that the replays from the first day of matches would sell the most, so this was the perfect time. At that moment, Co Yin placed her hand on his, saying she had time today and would join. Her words shook Kim Ho, leaving him momentarily caught off guard. The other students nearby overheard her, and whispers spread through the classroom, many questioning if they had just heard the voice of a future champion. Nervously, Kim Ho asked if she meant the magic bullet training they had spoken about earlier, and whether she wanted to do it that day. She confirmed without hesitation. Kim Ho accepted and told her they would meet later, and she agreed. That afternoon, Kim Ho and Go Hyunwoo entered the arena. As they stepped into the stadium, voices from the crowd recognized them. Some students whispered about Kim Ho, recalling that he was the one who had forfeited against Song Chun-hai. Another added mockingly that this must be the coward they had heard of. Outraged, Go Hyunwoo shouted back, demanding to know how they could speak so carelessly in front of the person himself, calling it disgraceful. He then turned to Kim Ho with intensity, showing his support. Kim Ho, however, calmly redirected the conversation. He asked Hyunwoo about his placement test results, mentioning that he had scored 300 points himself. Hyunwoo revealed he had earned the same score. This revelation drew laughter and provocation from the same student, a girl named Yang Ji-hong, who taunted that having the same score as a so-called coward meant nothing. She claimed that if she hadn't faced Song Chun-hai in her second match, she would have achieved more. Kim Ho recognized the name. He remembered Song Chun-hai as the student who had been struck by lightning and carried off the field. Realizing that Ji-hong was the one who had suffered that defeat, he pointed it out bluntly. Ji-hong froze at his words, startled, but insisted that at least their scores matched. Then, stepping forward, she challenged Kim Ho directly, declaring she would show him the wall between them. A system notification appeared, displaying the score matchup. Yang Ji-hong versus Kim Ho. Both sides 100%. Ji-hong swore she would finish the battle in a single strike. Kim Ho answered confidently, telling her to end it quickly if she could. The match officially began. Kim Ho immediately taunted her, remarking on how foolish she was for falling for the same trick again. At that instant, a system notification appeared. Status effect applied, paralysis. Shocked, Ji-hong felt her body seize and panicked, wondering what was happening to her. Kim Ho stepped closer, apologizing insincerely, explaining that unlike Song Chun-hai, he would not be able to finish things cleanly. Desperate, Ji-hong tried to plead, but before she could finish her words, her scream echoed through the arena. A system notification appeared, declaring the result of the match. Yang Ji-hong had lost, while Kim Ho had won. Yang Ji-hong, lying on the ground, muttered that she had only been caught off guard. She insisted that if they fought again, she would win. Kim Ho smiled faintly and suggested they try again. The system reset, showing both competitors at full strength. Yang Ji-hong declared that this time it would not be easy, but once more, she was defeated. The notification confirmed the result. Another loss for Yang Ji-hong, another win for Kim Ho. Kim Ho looked at her with mild disappointment, remarking that she had not improved at all. Frustrated, Yang Ji-hong swore that she would win the next time, but Kim Ho cut her off, saying he was tired and suggesting they wrap it up for the day. She clicked her tongue in frustration. Internally, Kim Ho reasoned that he still had to complete 3 matches, so he would act as though he did not want to continue. He then offered to teach her if she truly wanted to learn, but only if she paid tuition. Yang Ji-hong reluctantly agreed, calling him cold-blooded, and handed over a spiritual pill made by her family. Kim Ho accepted it, acknowledging that it wasn't a bad form of payment, but added one more condition. She must not record or speak about their matches. She agreed quickly, reasoning that it would bring her no benefit if word got out anyway. Satisfied, Kim Ho announced that since he had been paid, he would spar with her until she was content. The system once again displayed the results after multiple rounds. Yang Ji-hong lost repeatedly, while Kim Ho continued to win. Eventually, Kim Ho told her that was enough and praised her for her effort. Yang Ji-hong stopped him, saying she wanted to apologize. She admitted she had judged him too quickly based on appearances and conceded that he was not a coward. Kim Ho, however, replied that it was better to continue pretending he was one. Yang Ji-hong seemed puzzled, but accepted his words, realizing there must be a reason behind them. She noted that she couldn't be the only one to suffer and chose not to press the matter further. Afterward, Kim Ho walked over to Go Hyunwoo and asked if he had finished his own match. Go Hyunwoo told Kim Ho that he had already won 2 matches and would finish his third soon, so Kim Ho should go ahead. Kim Ho wished him good luck and left for the Manhwa training room. Inside, he greeted Seo Yin, apologizing for the wait and inviting her to sit. She acknowledged, and he began what he called the first special lecture on magic bullets. Seo Yin reacted with interest, and he instructed her to start by forming a basic magic bullet. As he watched, Kim Ho noted to himself that her skill was remarkable, though he still wondered how she had lost to Song Chun-hai with such strong control over mana. Seo Yin explained that their lesson would begin with distribution, The idea that each shot should use the proper amount of mana. Kim Ho asked what the second step was, but before she could answer, the system displayed a live match result. Seo Yin versus Kwok Ji-cheol, with the scores nearly even, 99% to 98%. On the battlefield, Kwok Ji-cheol thought to himself that he could hide within the environment, believing there was no way she could monitor every hill. But Seo Yin's eyes detected the unnatural flow of mana between the hills, exposing his position. Confident in his barrier, Kwok Ji-cheol assumed she could not break through, thinking he had nothing to fear from a gunner who had once failed against Song Chun-hai's shield. Yet moments later, he was caught off guard, exclaiming in shock and frustration. The system confirmed the outcome. Seo Yin had won, and Kwok Ji-cheol had lost. That night, Lee Sudok reflected on Seo Yin's battles. He analyzed her movements, noting that they were precise and at their peak. In her second match, she had completely dominated her opponent. But what stood out most to him was the contrast between her placement exam and now. Back then, her bullet had been a crude lump of mana. Now, in just 2 days, she had shaped it into a perfectly refined magic bullet. He questioned whether such rapid improvement was truly possible. Meanwhile, after their training, Kim Ho reminded Seo Yin about the magic bullet practice they had discussed earlier. She confirmed, and he told her they would meet later for it. Unbeknownst to them, Lee Sudok watched through his magic ball, observing their conversation. His expression hardened as he focused on Kim Ho, asking himself what Kim Ho really was. At the same time, Kim Ho worked alone on an artifact. Completing it, he remarked to himself that it was finally finished. A system notification appeared. He had created the Cube of Life, an item that increased the effectiveness of stored life-type items by 1.3 times. He reflected on how he had managed to complete it in time thanks to the amplified level he had earned as a quest reward. By meditating in parallel, he had also succeeded in pushing the core up to rank D. Another notification appeared. His Amplify skill rank had increased from F to E. Its duration had doubled from 1 to 2 minutes, and the cooldown had been reduced from 60 minutes to 50. Although the mana drain from using the skill had been intense, Kim Ho now felt some relief knowing it had become more efficient. With preparations complete, he considered that it was time to begin spreading word of his work. At that moment, he noticed someone nearby, a young woman he immediately recognized as Park Nari, a druid from the Nature Guild Union and a promising talent. Seeing her as a perfect opportunity, Kim Ho thought to himself that he would need her help. Animals, being highly sensitive to life energy, would not simply pass by without reacting to the cube. Just as he expected, an animal suddenly jumped toward the cube. Startled, Nari quickly turned and called out in alarm, asking what was wrong with it. Observing her reaction, Kim Ho silently confirmed that his plan was working. Nari, flustered, apologized and tried to pull the animal away, insisting that it leave immediately. Kim Ho noted to himself that, as expected of a druid, she had sensed the life energy radiating from a cube. Teasing her slightly, he asked if she could take the animal away quickly since he was in a rush. Embarrassed, she apologized again, remarking that she didn't understand why the animal was acting so strangely today. After finally pulling it back, Nari smiled politely and asked if Kim Ho was in Class 3. He answered simply that he was. Nari apologized once more, telling Kim Ho to take care before leaving with her animal. Watching her go, Kim Ho thought to himself that this encounter would be enough to spread word of his artifact to the Nature Club, which in turn would help him secure a season pass. With that part handled, he shifted his thoughts toward the main event he had been waiting for. Later, in class, the instructor guided the students through their lesson. She spoke about combat scenarios, instructing them to study the clash between the Goblin Champion and the Swordmaster, directing them to the appropriate page in their texts. While the lecture continued, Kim Ho kept track of the time. With 1 minute left until lunch, he silently counted down the seconds. The teacher concluded the class, leaving 32 seconds. Finally, 0, time for the break. As soon as the bell rang, a brown-haired student stretched in relief, glad class was over, but quickly froze in confusion. Something strange had appeared. He stammered, unsure of what he was seeing, and then the classroom erupted in screams as students shouted in alarm. The boy, panicked, questioned what had just happened. He wondered about the orb that had appeared, asking himself if it had been a barrier. Other students quickly noticed numbers glowing on their foreheads and pointed it out to one another in disbelief. At that moment, the school announced the event. A surprise possession inspection had begun. known as the band wave. It was a special magnetic field designed to detect forbidden items and list them on the official ban list. The inspection specifically targeted students carrying restricted goods. Kim Ho realized the process had already started. From a noise nearby, he recognized the voice of Jo Byok, who was being caught up in the wave. Go Hyun-woo, watching the scene unfold, remarked that it was interesting. Kim Ho, however, was already analyzing the situation. While some students were unaffected from the beginning, one particular boy, the same brown-haired student, was clearly in trouble. The student cursed loudly, panicking over the sudden inspection. Kim Ho approached him and asked if his club president hadn't already warned him about the inspection. The boy admitted he had been told, but claimed he hadn't expected anything this severe. Now frantic, he muttered that he would be in serious trouble if caught with everything he had. Kim Ho offered help, but when the boy hesitated, he told him to forget it. That only made the boy more desperate, begging Kim Ho to save him and swearing he would do anything in return. Kim Ho made him confirm the promise, then told him he owed him one. The boy nervously agreed. Kim Ho instructed him to place any banned items into a container, prioritizing smaller and more valuable ones. The boy hesitated again, asking what would happen to them once placed inside. Kim Ho cut him off, telling him they didn't have time to waste. Whether he trusted him or not was up to him, but the inspectors would arrive any moment. Convinced, the boy hurriedly placed his items inside, addressing Kim Ho respectfully as he did so. Right then, senior students entered the classroom and ordered everyone to freeze. One of them singled out Kim Ho and his companion, demanding to know what they were hiding. Kim Ho stood up and casually replied that they were just taking a break. The senior mocked the excuse, clearly unconvinced. Kim Ho's friend spoke up in his defense, insisting that it was true, he had only been resting. The senior, ignoring the protest, ordered them to hand over their banned items quietly, accusing them of somehow evading the ban wave, but warning that they couldn't hide from it. He explained that the crystal in his possession would expose any cheating. Then, turning his eyes on Kim Ho, he trailed off in disbelief, clearly stunned by what he saw. The crystal inspection showed no reaction. Kim Ho calmly addressed the senior, pointing out that it hadn't responded and asked if he could leave. The senior dismissed him, telling him to return to his seat. As he walked back, Kim Ho reflected on the situation. This was exactly why he had wanted everything finished before Friday, an item capable of bypassing the ban wave. Its true value was immeasurable, and anyone who understood what it was would stop at nothing to obtain it. For him, it was time to put it to use through trade. After the inspection ended, one of his classmates, the boy he had helped earlier, approached him in relief. He thanked Kim Ho earnestly, admitting that without his help, he would have lost all his possessions and possibly faced death or enslavement. Kim Ho reminded him that he would collect payment later and to consider it a debt. The boy promised he wouldn't try to escape the obligation. With that settled, Kim Ho suggested they head to the club room to unlock the forbidden items. His classmate agreed eagerly, adding that the president of his club had been waiting to meet Kim Ho in person. As they walked, the boy explained where they were headed. The club was infamous within Dragon Slayer Academy, dealing in illegal trades of banned items and thriving in chaos. It was the Thieves Club. They arrived, and the boy called out to his sister with a laugh. She immediately scolded him, striking him as she reminded him that she had told him not to slack off and that this was important. He yelped and begged her to stop. Kim Ho introduced himself politely, addressing her as senior. She introduced herself as Dang Yu-young. The boy then added proudly that she was not only his sister, but also the president of the club. Gi-young got straight to the point. She had already heard about the item from her brother, something that could evade the ban wave. She asked to see it herself. Kim Ho agreed, showing her. When she confirmed it was real, she admitted she hadn't fully believed until that moment. An item that could fool the ban wave was so valuable, it almost tempted her to steal it on the spot. Kim Ho warned her that she would be caught immediately if she tried, reminding her that a leader of the Thieves Club would certainly know about the anti-theft measures built into Meditative artifacts. Surprised, she asked if it truly was Meditative. Then she shifted the conversation, recognizing that Kim Ho must have come with a request. She pointed out that the club was strapped for resources and didn't have much to offer in return. Kim Ho told her it was something she could definitely handle. When she pressed him to say it, he explained that he wanted her to take him to the temporary storage, the holding place where items confiscated by the ban wave were kept before disposal. Normally, verification was done over the weekend, and afterward the items vanished into a hidden location that no one knew. Gi-young studied him carefully, then asked bluntly if he had been sent by the disciplinary committee. Kim-ho denied it, saying he wasn't on good terms with them. He admitted simply that there was something in temporary storage that he needed. She warned him not to expect a free ride. The club had invested significant effort in planning their move. He couldn't just show up and claim part of the reward. Kim-ho countered by pointing out that the storage was guarded by the disciplinary committee. Getting in was difficult enough, but escaping afterward would be even more dangerous. Then he added his proposal, if he could handle the letter for her, that should earn him a place on the job. That made her pause. She considered aloud that if they could load the most important contraband into his cube, they could guarantee it would be smuggled out safely. Kim-ho thought to himself that she wouldn't refuse such an offer. Finally, he asked her directly whether she was in. A little later, all of them stood on a cliff, looking down toward the entrance of the storage room. The leader of the club addressed the group, confirming that everyone had arrived. One of the members asked who the unfamiliar person was, prompting the leader to introduce Kim-ho to the team. She explained that she had added one more person to assist with the operation and instructed everyone to introduce themselves. Another member expressed concern, wondering aloud if it was really wise to bring a rookie on such an important mission. Kim-ho's friends responded in a light-hearted manner, greeting him enthusiastically and telling him to ignore the doubts, encouraging teamwork. At that moment, one of the members, focused on her device, informed the leader that only 1 minute remained. The leader nodded and assigned tasks. She instructed Davin to handle support from outside, while everyone else was to prepare. Then, turning to Kim-ho, she warned him not to stand out and to be careful. She advised him that once inside, they should prioritize stealing rare and small items first. Without further discussion, she activated her power and ordered everyone to move. The team sprang into action, heading toward the storage room as the leader shouted for them to go. Watching them, Kim-ho observed the skills she used and thought to himself that it was a B-rank ability called Silent Steps. With the life cube now complete, he realized he wouldn't need Magitech items for a while. Kim-ho extended his hand toward the leader in an attempt to copy her ability. A notification appeared before him, confirming that he was using the copy function. It showed that the target skill, Silent Steps, had been successfully copied to his skill slot. The message displayed his current skills, Hummingbird and Silent Steps, along with the description that this ability made his footsteps quick and silent. The scene then shifted to the entrance of the storage room. A guard stood before the door, keeping watch. Suddenly, a butterfly fluttered toward him and perched on his shoulder. He looked at it in surprise, reacting with a shocked expression as he muttered to himself about the butterfly. Suddenly, the butterfly exploded into a burst of dark, shadowy tendrils that spread out from where it had landed. The guard, now even more terrified, stared at the sudden appearance of the tentacles and panicked, struggling to speak but only managing muffled sounds of alarm. The scene then shifted to the third floor of an old building. Kim-ho's friend was running through the hallway, mentally frustrated by how many layers of security spells have been placed throughout the area. At that moment, a boy guarding the corridor noticed him and shouted, demanding to know who was there. Kim-ho's friend responded with annoyance, irritated by the poor timing of being spotted. Seeing the intruder, the guard immediately panicked and activated his powers, shouting that there was an intruder. Before he could finish, 2 other boys appeared and quickly overpowered him, binding him tightly. The guard struggled, making choking sounds, but was left helpless. Without waiting, Kim-ho and his team moved past the tied-up guard. Kim-ho's friend told him that it was better to handle the situation easily, explaining that struggling would only make things worse for everyone involved. Meanwhile, the club leader gathered the team and informed them that the temporary storage room was just around the corner. She instructed everyone to pause briefly, assess the situation, and then breach the room. Holding a mirror in her hand, she focused on the guard stationed at the storage door. Annoyed, she muttered that of all people, it had to be that goblin-looking guard on duty, adding that handling him alone would be too much for her. Kim-ho, observing the situation, looked toward the club leader and thought to himself. He realized that the guard was a third-year student wielding an A-rank axe called Hell Cleaver, and that this wouldn't be an easy challenge for Dang Gi-young. He also noted that his attempt to sneak in quietly might not work, so he decided it would be best to assist in the operation. Suddenly, the protagonist turned toward the club leader and quietly asked if she knew how to use the skill Shadow Dream. The club leader's eyes widened in surprise as she asked how he knew about it. Without hesitation, the protagonist responded that there was no time to explain and asked if she could use it. She admitted that she had only learned the basics and that it was still a C-rank skill. The protagonist, sounding confident, replied that it was perfect and good enough for their needs. At that moment, a notification appeared in front of the protagonist, showing that he was using the Amplify skill, which increased the rank of Shadow Dream from C to A, extending its duration and slightly reducing its cooldown. Feeling something surge through her body, the club leader, sweating, asked how he had done that. The protagonist ignored the question and told her there was no time to explain, urging her to proceed. The club leader, unable to respond, glanced at him with suspicion, wondering who he really was. A second later, she activated Shadow Dream. A swarm of dark butterflies appeared, flying straight toward the axe-wielding guard in front of the storage door. The guard, startled, realized it was a suction-type attack and panicked, swinging his axe and cutting some butterflies, but an explosion suddenly erupted from where he stood. The protagonist and the club leader quickly hid behind a nearby wall. The scene showed the guard being enveloped by numerous black threads formed from Shadow Dream's power. Observing this, the club leader, sweating, thought to herself that the axe-wielding guard, capable of A-rank firepower, had been taken out in a single blow. She then turned back to the protagonist and told him that they would need to talk later. The protagonist replied that finishing the mission came first. The club leader, now composed, loudly instructed the team to grab everything they needed and move quickly. The team members responded affirmatively. Meanwhile, the protagonist took out his life cube and thought about using it to shop for items. He reminded himself that the banned item list at the academy only restricted items based on their side effects. Anything that harmed the body or mind was banned. As he searched through the storage room, he considered that what he was looking for was a banned item with an elemental penalty. A notification identified the item as Shockstone, which carried the penalty of paralysis. The protagonist reasoned that with his S-rank elemental resistance, he could nullify that penalty, making a safe choice. He concluded that this was enough for now and decided to search for skill books next, knowing that skills with elemental penalties were often powerful. The protagonist examined several books and thought to himself that there should be something useful among them. As he continued searching, he found one that seemed particularly lucky. Realizing he didn't have a combat skill yet, he decided it would be wise to learn this skill immediately. Just then, a boy wearing glasses appeared inside the storage room. Looking at the team members with a cold expression, he remarked on how they were still working late into the night. He was introduced as Guak Sung Jae, a second-year student from the Demon Slayer Academy's Discipline Committee. Before anyone could respond, another boy appeared from behind him. He looked at the club leader with disdain and commented that she was starting the semester with theft, addressing her by name. This boy was Song Chun-ki, the president of the student council at the Dragon Slayer Academy. The club leader, visibly sweating, looked at the two intruders and asked why such high-ranking students were performing menial monitoring tasks. In her mind, she realized how troubling it was that first Guak Sung-jae, and now even the student council president had come down herself. Song Chun-ki then cut off the conversation and ordered them to disarm and come quietly to the disciplinary room. Hearing this, the club leader quickly considered that the longer they lingered, the worse the situation would get. Without hesitating, she raised her hand and instructed everyone to split up and escape immediately. She activated her skill, Shadow Haven, which created a dome of shadows concealing allies inside for 5 minutes, allowing them to escape unnoticed. Meanwhile, the glass-wearing boy, noticing the intruders fleeing the storage room, pulled out a glowing orb from his hand and ordered that no one be allowed to escape. The scene shifted to the hallway where the protagonist was sprinting at high speed. Suddenly, an object flew toward him, but he narrowly dodged it in the blink of an eye. The glass-wearing boy appeared in front of the protagonist and complimented his evasive move. The protagonist, recognizing him, thought in his mind that this must be Guak Sung-jae and wondered when he had arrived. Confidently, The boy activated his power and told the protagonist that he had already identified most members of the Thieves Club, but the protagonist was unfamiliar to him, probably a freshman. The protagonist remained silent, not responding. Noticing this, the boy suspected that the protagonist was trying to conceal his voice to avoid detection and praised the tactic as smart. Without warning, the boy attacked using his power and declared that surrender was clearly not an option. Without hesitation, the protagonist counterattacked using his own power. Seeing the force of the attack, the glass-wearing boy immediately defended himself and mocked the protagonist, calling him Hummingbird and saying it wouldn't be enough to help him. However, the protagonist's attack surged through all obstacles and struck the glass-wearing boy directly. Shocked, the boy thought to himself that he had never seen such precise control before and realized that without defensive spells, he would have been completely overwhelmed. Seizing the opportunity, the protagonist dashed toward the exit. Impressed despite himself, the glass-wearing boy acknowledged that it was impressive for a first-year student. Still, he wasn't ready to give up. He gathered his energy and surrounded the protagonist with multiple energy cannons, preparing for a final strike. Looking at the protagonist trapped by the energy, he declared that the student wouldn't have another chance and that it was time to finish him off. The glass-wearing boy released the energy from all the cannons at once, focusing on the protagonist's location. Confident in the power of his attack, he thought no one could withstand it. But as the energy hit its target, he suddenly felt an unexpected surge of heat. Out of the explosion, the protagonist reappeared, his hand blazing with fire. The glass-wearing boy, stunned, immediately recognized the technique and wondered aloud if it was the very skill he feared. Seeing the protagonist's fire-covered hand, the glass-wearing boy immediately thought to himself that it had to be a forbidden skill. Only someone reckless or insane would dare to use it. Without wasting a moment, the protagonist formed a fist using his skill and launched a powerful attack called Inferno Fist. The force of his strike sent the boy flying through the air. The protagonist, focusing on his own fist, admitted to himself that controlling it was far more difficult than expected. The power was tricky to manage and demanded careful handling. Looking toward the boy who had been knocked away, the protagonist realized that since the injuries weren't serious, the school wouldn't intervene. However, he knew that higher authorities like the Emerald Magic Tower and the disciplinary committee would definitely take notice. He scratched his head thoughtfully, concluding that they would try to uncover his identity, though he was confident they wouldn't find anything. At that moment, a loud sound came from a distance, and someone called out, pointing toward the noise, saying they had heard the crash from that direction. The protagonist quickly assessed the situation and decided it would be best to escape before he was caught. Soon, a girl and a boy appeared from that direction. The girl, alarmed, addressed the boy as senior and insisted they take him to the infirmary quickly. The scene then shifted to the disciplinary committee's room, known as the Room of Truth. Inside, the club leader sat on a sofa, visibly annoyed, and asked how long they would be kept there. She urged them to simply deduct the points and let them go. A pink-haired boy, approaching the door, responded that his business there was finished and that he was heading out. The disciplinary committee chief, seated opposite the club leader, laughed sarcastically and thanked her for the trouble. Without delay, he handed her a set of papers, telling her that if she cooperated, the matter could be wrapped up quickly. This committee chief was recognized as the disciplinary committee chief of Sihun. When the club leader glanced at the papers, she was surprised and asked what it was. Inwardly, she realized that Kim Ho must have carefully packed only the small and valuable items, avoiding anything bulky that could draw attention. The committee chief pressed further, asking if she knew about the missing items, stating that many had vanished without explanation. The club leader, with a dismissive tone, claimed it was the first time she had seen any of the items. The chief warned her that continued denial would result in the entire group being held responsible. Unfazed, the club leader brushed it off and agreed to take the blame. The chief, disappointed but unsurprised, remarked that he expected her response all along. Later, the club leader walked out of the room with a smile, while the chief warned that disciplinary action would begin the next day. The club leader casually responded, saying it was fine and bid him farewell. As she exited, one of her club members asked if she was all right, showing concern for her well-being. After hearing her club members' concern, the club leader responded calmly, complimenting everyone's effort and saying they would go over the details later in the clubroom. However, she suddenly noticed something unusual. Looking at the group, she asked why only 4 members were present and wondered where the last one was. One of the disciplinary committee members nearby, disappointed, accused her of pretending to be ignorant until the very end and scolded her for being shameless. The club leader, surprised by the accusation, asked what the problem was. The disciplinary member, growing more frustrated, shouted that one of her club's members had used the Inferno Fist technique, resulting in Senior Guak Sungjae being hospitalized. The club leader's expression changed immediately. She asked in shock if the great Guak Sungjae was really in the infirmary. Internally, she realized that anyone using such a dangerous skill must possess formidable abilities. Later, back in the clubroom, she noticed Kim Ho's hand and asked if it was all right. She pointed out that it looked perfectly fine and questioned whether he had used the Inferno Fist. Kim Ho confidently replied that he wouldn't have used it without a plan. Relieved, though still sweating from concern, she accepted his explanation and expressed trust that he had handled the situation well. Her mood shifted quickly to excitement as she asked if the items were all safe. Kim Ho confirmed that everything was intact by taking out the cube. Seeing the cube and its contents, she beamed with delight. She marveled at how pretty the items were, especially their colors. Kim Ho then placed the items on the table and stated that the deal was complete. Pleased, the club leader congratulated him, saying it was an excellent deal. Kim Ho began to leave, saying he would be on his way. Before he could exit, she called him back, offering to let him join their club. She assured him that she would take great care of him. Kim Ho, intrigued, asked if that was a recruitment offer. When Kim Ho asked if the offer was a recruitment invitation, the club leader responded playfully, saying she had been watching him. She joked that he was arrogant and greedy, calling him a thief in every possible way. Kim Ho, taken aback and sweating slightly, replied that her words sounded more like an insult than an actual offer to join the club. Either way, he declined. Annoyed by his response, the club leader grew irritated and urged him to reconsider. Kim Ho, unfazed, showed her the cube again and bluntly asked if she wanted him for the life cube, because he intended to sell it. Her eyes widened in shock as she asked what he meant. Without changing his tone, Kim Ho explained that he wanted the special practice room season pass, 4 of them. The club leader was stunned and nervously asked if he planned to acquire 4 passes just to avoid the ban wave. Kim Ho clarified that avoiding the ban wave was only a bonus, and the real advantage came from the core ability. She asked what the core ability was, confused. Kim Ho responded that he would first show her the item description, but wanted a small favor before that. Curious, she asked what kind of favor he needed. Kim Ho smiled gently and said she only needed to pass a message to the head of the Meditative Club, that a freshman had completed a 101,010 cube. The club leader was surprised, but agreed that it was simple enough. She asked to see the item description. After looking at it, she was shocked again and exclaimed at the enhancement it provided, boosting the effects of stored life-type items by 1.3 times. A notification appeared in front of the club leader, displaying the details of the life cube. It explained that the cube enhanced the effects of stored life-type items by 1.3 times. Seeing this, she was stunned and exclaimed in disbelief, questioning how such an item could even exist. She immediately recognized its value, saying it was completely worth the price. Kim Ho, handing the cube to her, calmly asked if she was satisfied and added that he would be on his way. As he began to leave, she called after him from behind, reminding him that even without the cube, her offer still stood and urging him to think it over carefully. Kim Ho smiled and replied respectfully, acknowledging her offer without committing. A few days later, on the campus of Dragon Slayer Academy, Kim Ho and his friend Seo Yin walked toward their classroom. Kim Ho casually asked if she had a good weekend. She replied shortly, confirming she did. Kim Ho, noticing how tired she looked, pressed further, asking if she was sure she was okay. She didn't deny it, but remained quiet. At the same time, Kim Ho noticed 2 people following them. Observing them carefully, he thought to himself that they seemed to be making a move, likely from either the Emerald Magic Tower or the Nature Club. He wasn't particularly concerned, but found it annoying and considered handling the situation right away. Turning to Seo Yin, he told her to go ahead without him, saying something urgent had come up and he would take care of it quickly. She noticed the tailing figures and agreed without hesitation. Once Co Yin left, Kim Ho faced the two followers and asked them directly why they kept following him. He told them to speak up if they had something to say. One of them looked at him arrogantly and claimed that Kim Ho had walked right into them, saving them the trouble. He then revealed that they were from the Emerald Magic Tower and asked if that cleared things up. The other follower, a girl, awkwardly explained that their leader had asked them to bring Kim Ho in and inquired if he would mind coming with them. Kim Ho, unfazed, replied confidently that he wasn't part of their tower and told them that if they needed anything, their leader could come in person. When Kim Ho made it clear that he wasn't going to cooperate, the boy's eyes lit up with excitement. He pulled out a pair of gloves, eager for a fight, and told Kim Ho that some people only understand a lesson after receiving a solid blow. Kim Ho agreed without hesitation and immediately launched an attack. The boy was struck instantly and electrified, writhing in pain as sparks shot through him. The girl with him looked on in shock, staring at her companion lying on the ground. She exclaimed in disbelief, recognizing the attack as the hummingbird's skill and struggling to speak. Without missing a beat, Kim Ho turned toward her, preparing to attack again. He told her that if she wanted a fight, she should come at him immediately since he was short on time. Terrified, the girl raised both hands in surrender, apologizing profusely and asking to be spared. Inside her mind, she realized that the hummingbird's movements were far from ordinary. It was obvious this was a highly skilled fighter, and it was best not to get involved. She quickly told Kim Ho that she would take her companion back and that he should go ahead without worry. Kim Ho, unimpressed, walked away, remarking that at least one of them knew when to quit. The girl lifted her companion and, half joking, wondered aloud if the rumors about Kim Ho being a coward weren't true after all. The boy, still arrogant despite his defeat, dismissed it. He claimed Kim Ho had just gotten lucky with one hit and vowed to make him pay next time. Before he could finish, a magic bullet suddenly struck him in the head out of nowhere. Shocked, the girl's eyes widened as she exclaimed, "A sniper? From where?" Before she could process it further, another bullet hit her as well, and she groaned in frustration, asking, "Why me too?" Both of them collapsed to the ground, stunned, in the middle of the crowd. Later, the scene shifted to their classroom, where the teacher was explaining to all the students that dungeons are designed to drain one's resources before reaching the core. If supplies run out before achieving the goal, the entire run is considered a failure. Kim Ho sat among the students, listening. Just then, his friend approached and sat beside him. Noticing this, Kim Ho asked why she showed up late when she had left first that morning. The teacher continued explaining to the students, emphasizing that this time's dungeon raid would be a time attack. Students could attempt surface-level dungeons multiple times in practice mode, but scoring would only be allowed once. They needed to reach the target and destroy the totem within 5 minutes to clear the challenge. The teacher advised everyone to practice and find the most efficient route before going live, and then concluded the class for the day. After the class ended, a pink-haired boy approached Go Hyun-woo, playfully calling out to him and asking if he wanted to team up for a 2-player dungeon run. Go Hyun-woo hesitated for a moment, but seemed open to the idea. Meanwhile, Kim Ho extended his hand toward his friend, reassuring him not to worry about him and telling him to go ahead with the others. His friend agreed without much thought, saying that if Kim Ho said so, he'd try syncing with another teammate. Kim Ho, sweating slightly, glanced at the other students and silently realized that his friend had already made up his mind. Just then, Co Yin, his friend, innocently tugged at his clothes and told him to come with her. Sometime later, the boy who had been following Kim Ho was seen pinned against a wall by someone. Frustrated, he protested, complaining about the unfairness of the situation. A short-haired boy, wearing an angry and demanding expression, scolded him harshly. He explained that his older brother, who was supposedly from the disciplinary committee, had been defeated by a thief. He lashed out, saying that the two brothers were tarnishing his family's reputation. Nearby, the girl who had also been following Kim Ho was kneeling on the ground, one hand raised toward the sky. The short-haired boy, still enraged, mocked the idea that a famous coward could not be defeated even by a large group of people. After releasing the pinned boy from the wall, The short-haired boy walked away, calling him pathetic, sighing heavily in disappointment. Later, the same short-haired boy sat down on a wooden chair, admitting that he had a bad feeling from the beginning. Standing beside him was a blue-haired girl who suggested they should meet Kim Ho in person. She was introduced as Ha Soo-yeon, the leader of the Nature Club, part of the Guild Alliance. The short-haired boy, Mak Jong-hwa, who led the Emerald Magic Tower, agreed with a more relaxed expression that they should meet him. He added grimly that the prestige of the Emerald Magic Tower had fallen to the ground. He believed that the mysterious box Kim Ho possessed wasn't enough to restore their status, and that Kim Ho must be made to pay for ignoring their organization. Meanwhile, the green-haired boy who had been following Kim Ho struggled to stand up from the ground. He pleaded to be given another chance, insisting he would make up for his failure. The short-haired boy dismissed him coldly, questioning his right to even ask for another chance. Still, the green-haired boy stood firm, explaining that he had simply been caught off guard and begged for one more opportunity. The short-haired boy's gaze turned intense as he warned him that if he failed again, he would be expelled from the club. He asked him if he still wanted the chance. The green-haired boy confidently answered that he was sure he could win. The short-haired boy, in a tone that was both encouraging and threatening, promised to lend him his golem. He warned that this time, he needed to defeat his opponents overwhelmingly. Grateful, the green-haired boy bowed respectfully and vowed that he would surely win. Later, the scene shifted to the training ground located in the Goblin Swamp. Kim Ho and his friend Seo Yin were running through a group of goblins. Kim Ho reassured her, saying that since it was only practice, there was no need to rush. She responded simply with agreement. As Kim Ho glanced at his system panel, he thought about how to earn the best reward for both solo and duo dungeons. The system panel displayed a sub-quest titled Second Week Strategy Battle, where the goal was to clear the dungeon within the week. Rewards would vary depending on how much time remained, with specific targets for solo and duo runs. Seeing that, Kim Ho realized he would need to complete both challenges within 1 minute. At that moment, 2 goblins appeared in front of them. Looking at the goblins, Kim Ho thought that handling the solo dungeon wouldn't be a problem, but the duo dungeon was a different challenge. He considered that if he shared the patterns with Seo Yin, it would be easier, but that wouldn't help her grow. Without noticing his thoughts, Seo Yin simply attacked the goblins with magic bullets. Kim Ho, still analyzing the situation, realized that helping her like this wouldn't allow her to develop. He decided she needed to learn through practice. Suddenly, a new goblin appeared, wielding a large sword. A system notification popped up, identifying it as a strong enemy, the submerged goblin. Both Kim Ho and Seo Yin stopped in front of the goblin. Kim Ho smiled gently and asked if she wanted to avoid the goblin like they had in their first practice or try to catch it. Seo Yin hesitated, then asked if catching it would earn points. Kim Ho confirmed that defeating a boss monster would give an additional 120 points. Motivated, she decided to try catching it. Hearing Seo Yin's determination, Kim Ho activated his power and launched an attack on the goblin. He encouraged her, telling her he would support her effort. The goblin swung its large sword to defend itself, but despite the block, the attack still landed and knocked it back, affecting its entire body. From behind Kim Ho, Seo Yin suddenly appeared, holding her gun aimed at the goblin. She gritted her teeth and exclaimed in frustration at the situation. She fired the goblin, but the bullet had no effect. Instead, it only irritated the goblin further. Angered, the goblin shifted its attention from Kim Ho to Seo Yin and charged toward her. Reacting instantly, Seo Yin tried to activate her ability, using amplification to enhance her attack. However, before she could act, Kim Ho stepped in. With a determined expression, Kim Ho activated his skills once more and cut her off, declaring that she wouldn't get the chance to be attacked. At that moment, a notification popped up announcing that Hummingbird's rank had increased from E to C. A massive electric bird materialized from Kim Ho's power and struck the goblin, overwhelming it. A short while later, a notification appeared in front of both of them. It showed that 11 or more goblins had been defeated, with only 18 seconds left on the clock. The time remaining was 2 minutes and 29 seconds, granting them 149 points, with a clear bonus of 500 points totaling 649 points. Looking at the notification, Kim Ho commented that they had cut down the completion time significantly compared to their first practice and wondered if they could reduce it even further. Seo Yin replied softly, agreeing. Then, with a blank expression, she turned to him and asked if he could give another special lecture on magic bullets. Kim Ho smiled to himself, realizing she secretly harbored a competitive spirit and that struggling with the boss monster had hurt her pride. He then suggested that they wrap up their practice and head to the training center. Seo Yin agreed enthusiastically. Later, the scene shifted to the training center's shooting range. Kim Ho began explaining a new skill to her. He told her that although her magic bullets and gun were flawless, she was still using them as mere tools without truly mastering their potential. Holding a magic bullet in his hand, he offered to demonstrate how to better understand the skill by imagining her hand as a magic gun, making it easier for her to grasp the concept. Kim Ho demonstrated how to fire a magic bullet toward a target dummy, explaining that by concentrating mana and releasing it at the right moment, one could replicate the effect of a magic bullet. He encouraged his friend to attempt the technique using just her hand first. Later, Seo Yin tried to follow his instructions, focusing on channeling her mana to her fingertips as though drawing it upward. However, the energy unexpectedly flew backward, startling her. Kim Ho, excited by her effort, urged her to attempt the motion without using an actual magic bullet, explaining that success would mean simply being able to propel the mana outward. After giving her encouragement, he told her to continue practicing while he stepped away to gather dinner items. But she quickly stopped him, searching her pocket and pulling out a black card, offering it to him as a helpful tool. Upon seeing the card, Kim Ho was visibly surprised, recognizing that she came from a wealthy background. Later in the cafeteria, while placing his order for a mini donut, two members of the disciplinary committee nearby discussed how the limited edition treat had been worth the wait. One of the girls then spotted Kim Ho and greeted him enthusiastically, prompting the other to ask who he was. Kim Ho responded casually, but the pink-haired girl from the committee grew visibly annoyed, questioning why he was the one there. Yet she quickly reconsidered, realizing it would be useful to confirm something. She approached him and asked to see his hand, which caught him off guard. He questioned why she suddenly wanted to inspect it. Meanwhile, the girl's mind raced. She suspected that he was the thief who had used a powerful technique during the storage incident, someone with expert-level control over a rare skill. She also recalled his connection to the Thieves Club, confirming her suspicions. Driven by curiosity, she explained that she wanted to check something on his palm, likening it to palm reading. In her mind, the pink-haired girl thought that if Inferno Fist had been used, there would surely be burn marks on his hands. The protagonist noticed her observation and internally noted how flustered she seemed. She appeared eager to see his hands for herself, as if searching for proof, while he calmly allowed her to examine them. Her expression softened as she inspected one hand and then moved to the other, clearly surprised that both were untouched. The protagonist, with a hint of exasperation, internally wondered how long this inspection would continue. Flustered by the prolonged scrutiny, the girl quickly withdrew and apologized for the intrusion. The protagonist, however, made one last request for her to reveal the result of her palm reading, particularly regarding his luck with love. She became slightly irritated at his persistence, thinking he would face many difficulties ahead. The protagonist quietly smiled to himself, realizing that she and others were still attempting to identify the culprit from the temporary storage incident. He felt reassured that by dodging her question just enough, he should be safe for now. The next day, the protagonist and his friend Seo Yin were at the training ground, running toward the forest as usual. They moved in sync, following the routine they had practiced the day before. Seo Yin immediately began targeting goblins with her magic bullets, though the shots caused little damage. The protagonist, meanwhile, unleashed his own attacks using his scales, obliterating the goblins instantly. After a short while, a notification appeared before them, detailing their progress. The remaining time, the number of goblins defeated, and the score from defeating a strong enemy. The total score reflected their efficiency and teamwork, a tangible result of their practice. The protagonist glanced at Co Yin and felt a sense of satisfaction. The battle had gone flawlessly, a perfect demonstration of their combined efforts. He quietly acknowledged in his mind that the success was a direct outcome of their hard work the previous day. Observing her gentle smile in response, he noted the subtle acknowledgement of their achievement, feeling a quiet sense of contentment. Later, the scene shifted to the arena, where countless students filled the stadium, all gathered near the gates. The protagonist and his friend Co Yin prepared themselves, considering the solo dungeon ahead. He reminded himself that, although the solo dungeon shouldn't be too difficult, it would be wise for her to attempt a few runs in practice mode, just in case. Confident in his own abilities after clearing the duo dungeon, he felt ready to handle the challenge on his own and finally focus on his personal quests. Stepping through the portal, he was greeted by a notification announcing their entry into the Goblin Swamp. Without hesitation, he activated his power, delivering a punch into the air that instantly defeated the monsters before him. Even in an artificial dungeon, he realized controlling his strength was trickier than expected. Another notification displayed their progress. The number of goblins defeated, the strong enemies taken down, remaining time, and the total score, including bonuses. Satisfaction washed over him as he noted the impressive results and silently decided to delete the replay before leaving. A final notification confirmed the completion of the subquest for the second week strategy, showing both solo and duo dungeon times along with enhanced rewards. Examining the details, he realized the reward had been confirmed at the highest grade, leaving no need for further thought. The system prompted the protagonist to select his reward, offering options that enhance recovery and buff-type skills, debuff and illusion-type skills, and wind-type skills. From the start, he had aimed for the trait that aligned perfectly with his chosen path. A green bowl of wind materialized in front of him, representing the versatile support role he now embodied. A notification confirmed the acquisition of the trait skill, officially marking him as a wind-type supporter. After emerging from the portal, the protagonist was met by the familiar short-haired boy, Manhwa, deputy head of the Emerald Magic Tower, accompanied by the blue-haired girl, Hasuyan of the Great Nature Club. They suggested moving to a more private location to speak. Later, in a cafeteria setting, Hasuyan began by apologizing for previous events, though the protagonist acknowledged his own haste. The conversation quickly shifted as she indicated interest in a special item he possessed. Understanding their true intention, the protagonist revealed the cube. The green-haired girl's small, dark-colored cat immediately reacted, rushing toward the cube before curling up inside it. The sight confirmed the item's authenticity, leaving the short-haired boy momentarily stunned. The green-haired girl, noticing the kitten inside the cube, urged it to come out, but the protagonist calmly told her to leave it be. The blue-haired girl observed the scene with curiosity, noting how attached the kitten seemed to the cube. She sensed the cube radiated the energy of a powerful life-type artifact and requested permission to examine its item description, assuring him the club would protect the information with their honor. The protagonist, seeing no harm, agreed. The short-haired boy's face reflected shock as he read the cube's description, realizing its effects were 1.3 times stronger than typical stored life-type items. The blue-haired girl also reacted with astonishment, marveling at the item's ridiculous power. She then inquired if he was willing to sell it. But the protagonist remained non-committal, acknowledging the cube's value. The short-haired boy became insistent, emphasizing that such an item's true worth could only be realized in the hands of someone skilled and imploring him not to waste it. The protagonist found their proactive approach amusing and felt a quiet sense of gratitude for it. Despite this, he composed himself and explained that he would need to hesitate before making a decision. The blue-haired girl, still curious, encouraged him to state his terms, promising to accommodate his requests. With confidence, the protagonist laid out his conditions. For special engineering room season passes, a princess's single season pass along with items equivalent to 3 others, and a blank skill book. The short-haired boy reacted with visible frustration, slamming his hand on the table, convinced the demands were excessively greedy. As the negotiation continued, the blue-haired girl considered the protagonist's demands. She felt the season pass request was reasonable, but a blank skill book seemed excessive. The protagonist, sensing the hesitation, decided to back off and suggested letting the deal be forgotten. Just as he was preparing to leave, the green-haired girl spoke up from the back, revealing that she actually possessed one of those blank skill books. She admitted she hadn't used it yet, having no suitable skills to imprint, and would likely keep it in her inventory indefinitely. Glancing at her beloved kitten, she smiled, noting how much it enjoyed the cube. The blue-haired girl allowed her to go ahead, and the green-haired girl gratefully offered the blank skill book. Without delay, they handed the item over, swiftly completing the trade. The protagonist appreciated the efficiency of the transaction, took the item, and reflected on the success of the deal. The calm was broken when a green-haired boy suddenly stood up, expressing anger and demanding a duel. The protagonist, maintaining composure, declined, dismissing the idea as unnecessary. The boy was shocked, insisting that duels were honorable, but the protagonist pointed out the irony of someone who valued honor ganging up on him with another person. Frustrated, the boy struggled to respond, but the protagonist simply walked away, stating that he had no intention of wasting time on frivolous challenges and suggested the boy could boast however he wished. Seeing an opportunity to escalate, the short-haired boy produced a card, announcing a prize for the match, signaling that the confrontation was far from over. The card turned out to be a production VIP ticket, which immediately raised the stakes. The short-haired boy questioned whether the duel was truly worth the protagonist's time, and the protagonist, smiling, accepted the challenge. The green-haired boy deferred the choice of date to him, and the protagonist decided that 2 days later would be suitable, explaining that he needed that time to master something first. The short-haired boy, confident in his judgment, remarked on the limited time to design and learn a skill, challenging the protagonist to do his best. The protagonist, filled with excitement, assured them they could look forward to the outcome. 2 days later, the arena was filled with spectators. The protagonist's friend sat among the audience, while the Thieves Club leader appeared, concerned about the duel. She questioned why the protagonist had accepted, noting that Manhwa was likely full of tricks. Her brother replied, reasoning that the protagonist must have believed he could win and had his own strategy. Despite this, a sense of unease lingered, prompting the Thieves Club leader to watch carefully for any unexpected tactics. Meanwhile, in the arena, the green-haired boy prepared for the duel, putting on his gloves and acknowledging the protagonist's courage for not backing down. The stage was set, tension building as the duel was about to commence. The protagonist acknowledged the stakes with a simple thought, noting that a VIP ticket was on the line and there was no reason to refuse. From the audience, the short-haired boy reminded both sides that the duel would be recorded as a replay, visible to anyone, and both the protagonist and the green-haired boy agreed. The announcement to begin came, directing both duelists to enter the arena. Immediately, a system notification appeared. The map was set to the dark zone. The rule was deathmatch, with a 10-minute limit, and the score was displayed at 100% for both Kim Ho and Kwok Ji-cheol. In an instant, they were transported to a different location, and the battle officially began. The green-haired boy, fueled with excitement and determination, reminded himself of the difference in their levels, confident that he would prove himself this time. The protagonist, however, did not respond verbally, his focus entirely on activating his power. A faint light appeared at his fingertips, catching the green-haired boy off guard. The sudden appearance of the attack shocked him, and before he could react, the protagonist's assault landed, sending him sprawling to the ground. When the green-haired boy struggled to stand, the protagonist remarked on the dirt floor, noting it shouldn't be difficult to endure, though the boy's dramatics suggested otherwise. Frustrated, the boy gathered rocks with his skill, readying a new attack called Earth Cluster, hurling them toward the protagonist. With calculated precision, the protagonist dodged the rocks and redirected one back toward the boy, eliciting a shocked reaction as he realized the same trick was being used against him again. An explosion followed, and when the dust cleared, the green-haired boy lay on the ground, frustrated and determined not to let the match slip away. Struggling to rise, he acknowledged the protagonist's strength and prepared a more serious attack, thinking that this duel must end with him as the winner. In a sudden display, he summoned a massive entity behind him, a wood golem, a creation imbued with the forest's power, granting life to an ancient tree. The golem towered behind him, signaling that the next phase of the duel would be far more dangerous and intense. From the audience, the Thief Club leader watched the duel with mounting frustration. Her anger boiled over at the sight of the golem, shouting in outrage. Her brother tried to calm her, but it only seemed to escalate her irritation. She then turned her glare toward a third-year student observing from a distance, furious at his presence, blaming him for allowing the situation. Nearby, the short-haired boy, watching the arena without shifting his attention to the chaos, quietly noted that while he had hoped the golem wouldn't be used, its destruction would pose no real challenge. Meanwhile, the Thief Club leader's thoughts raced. With so many eyes on the match, the protagonist could not risk using his most dangerous attack, and perhaps someone should intervene. The protagonist, however, remained calm, his expression blank as he assessed the massive golem before him. His opponent, fueled by excitement, expected to intimidate him with threats, but the protagonist's mind was elsewhere, reflecting on 2 days prior in the Mana training room. He reviewed his silent training sessions, contemplating the most effective type of supporter. He understood that the answer varied depending on the situation, which was why supporters came in different forms: healers, buffers, and debuffers. But for an all-rounder, he knew there was no skill more optimal than the one he had chosen from the blank spellbook. Back in the present, the green-haired boy, determined to finish the duel decisively, unleashed the golem toward the protagonist. Calmly, the protagonist dodged the massive assault, utilizing his skill to climb onto the golem. As he prepared his counter, he reflected on his approach. For someone aiming to be a win-type support, replicating this skill from a blank spellbook was the most efficient and strategic choice. With a single, precise attack, the protagonist struck the golem, instantly neutralizing it. At the same time, a notification appeared before him, detailing the skill he had just used. Wind Force, imbuing physical force into wind, enhanced by the blessing of the west wind and further boosted by Amplify. The scoreboard updated simultaneously, clearly marking his victory over Kwok Ji-cheol. From the audience, his friend erupted in excitement, cheering energetically at the display of skill and efficiency. Witnessing the powerful duel and seeing the golem defeated brought immense satisfaction, making the victory feel even more impressive. Meanwhile, the short-haired boy, frustrated by the outcome, was left unable to respond. Shortly after, the short-haired boy entered the arena and handed the protagonist the promised VIP production ticket. Accepting it politely, the protagonist suggested keeping the duel's replay footage private, reasoning that the Emerald Magic Tower would likely prefer it not be publicized. Members of the club, including the green-haired boy and the short-haired boy, expressed their irritation at the protagonist's proposal, questioning what he wanted in return. Calmly, the protagonist replied that he only expected a small favor later. Without even looking at him, the short-haired boy agreed, sealing the deal. As the two left the arena, the protagonist reflected internally. While he had framed the arrangement as generous, his true intention was simply to maintain control over the replay, keeping it private for his own purposes. The protagonist activated his skill once more, observing the faint energy swirling around his hand with a satisfied smile. He reflected internally on the impact of his new ability, Wind Force, considering that the slower news of it spread, the better it would serve his strategy. Shortly after, his friend approached, expressing admiration for his recent victory. The protagonist responded by presenting the promised VIP pass, catching his friend completely off guard. A brief, playful exchange followed, with the protagonist reminding his friend that he had predicted achieving it within 2 weeks. Before the moment could settle, the Thief Club leader approached, her excitement barely contained, pressing him about the deal he had struck with Mak Younghwa and commending his skill at negotiation. The protagonist responded with an awkward laugh, brushing off the comment until she had calmed down. With the conversation turning more serious, the protagonist reminded her of the favor he had requested earlier. The club leader acknowledged it, referring to the Magic Engineering Club, and indicated that they had expressed interest in meeting him soon. Internally, The protagonist recognized the timing as perfect, feeling a surge of anticipation and preparing to go meet them without delay. The scene shifted to Magic Engineering Workshop number 1. Upon entering, the protagonist couldn't help but admire the workshop's grandeur. The atmosphere was completely different from the 4th workshop where he had obtained the cube. This place carried a distinctly refined and impressive vibe. A boy approached him, immediately confirming his identity. The protagonist recognized him as Bong Jae-suk, a third-year student and the head of the Magic Engineering Club. The boy mentioned that he had already received the details from Dang Gi-young and motioned for the protagonist to follow him to the clubroom, moving with a noticeable sense of urgency. The protagonist noted the haste, but followed without complaint. Inside the office, the two faced each other across the desk. Bong Jae-suk brought up the cube, acknowledging its technical ownership by the club, but clarifying that he wasn't interested in unnecessary conflict. Extending his hand, he requested a look at the completed cube, emphasizing that no one else could have built it. The protagonist calmly revealed that he no longer had the cube, leaving Bong Jae-suk momentarily stunned. He explained that he had entrusted it to nature for safekeeping, which frustrated the senior, prompting him to stand and declare the meeting a waste of time. Before leaving, the protagonist produced some papers, catching Bong Jae-suk off guard. The gesture made it clear that he had not come empty-handed, leaving the senior momentarily speechless and intrigued. The boy's shock was immediate when he saw the papers. His eyes widened as he realized that the documents contained the 10 by 10 by 10 cube blueprint. Sweating and staring intensely at the sheets, he noted the painstaking detail captured in every configuration, though he quickly noticed that the blueprint was incomplete. Excitement overtook him as he demanded confirmation that the protagonist possessed the rest of the blueprint. Calmly, the protagonist assured him that it had been kept safe. The boy, eager and slightly breathless, pressed him to state his demands. The protagonist simply indicated a single request: access to workshop number 1's equipment. The senior considered it briefly before agreeing to allow use during the day, with exclusive access from midnight to early morning. The protagonist presented additional papers in exchange, and the deal was sealed. Once he received the remaining sheets from the protagonist, the boy's tone shifted as he inquired if the protagonist had considered joining the Magic Engineering Club. The protagonist laughed softly, declining politely, and the senior acknowledged it with understanding. He encouraged the protagonist to continue producing blueprints of such caliber and offered access to leftover materials from the workshop, if needed. With a final nod, he departed, leaving the protagonist alone. The protagonist watched him leave with a gentle smile, silently appreciating the straightforwardness of the interaction. In his mind, he reflected that the groundwork was now complete, marking the true beginning of his preparations for crafting a terminal-grade weapon. In the infirmary, the disciplinary committee was hard at work. A glass-wearing member leaned toward the short-haired boy, urging him to reconsider his decision. The short-haired boy, however, remained firm, questioning why he should. The glass-wearing member pressed on, noting how few first years could even face a golem, let alone a third year. The short-haired boy countered, pointing out that despite the difficulty, the act had tarnished Emerald's reputation. The other boy admitted that his own sibling had acted out of line, but he questioned whether the protagonist had acted alone. Frustration flashed across the short-haired boy's face. He demanded to know if the disciplinary committee was interfering in Emerald's affairs, to which the glass-wearing member calmly responded that he was merely requesting a fair judgment. After a tense pause, the short-haired boy finally asked what was being sought. The other boy replied simply, "Give the protagonist a chance." He proposed a 2-month trial, during which the protagonist's ranking, specifically Kwok Jicheol's, would determine the outcome. The glass-wearing boy agreed, acknowledging that 2 months was more than sufficient. As the short-haired boy walked away, he muttered a sharp "humph" and glanced back, calling out the name Song Chun-hai. Hiding behind a wall, the pink-haired girl of the disciplinary committee had overheard the exchange. Sheepishly, she stepped out and asked if he had known she was there. The glass-wearing boy smirked, revealing that he had noticed her sneaking into the arena bleachers. He questioned her on the fight's outcome, asking if she believed she could defeat the protagonist herself. She admitted she couldn't say for certain. He pressed further, asking if she had checked the protagonist's hands. Flustered, she confirmed that she had inspected both hands thoroughly and found no scratches. The glass-wearing boy paused, thinking to himself, if the protagonist had used Inferno Fist, there was no way he could have healed that quickly. Had he misjudged him? Doubt lingered, but he knew there was still more to uncover. Suddenly, he remembered the protagonist he had faced, and frustration surged through him. In his mind, he thought again, that arrogant gaze like everything's beneath him. It's hard to believe that's not the same person. Turning his attention back to the girl, the glass-wearing boy said, "I'm sorry. I'll have to ask you to keep working on this." She clenched her fist tightly and replied, "No need to apologize. I'm doing this because I want to. I'll definitely catch him slipping." It was Monday of the third week. The protagonist's homeroom teacher addressed all the students, explaining that cooperation would be just as important as it had been in the previous week. However, the objective this time was different, and through the match, they might discover weaknesses in their teamwork that had gone unnoticed before. To address these issues, a mentoring program had been organized within the academy, and the students were encouraged to carefully consider the opportunity throughout the week. The teacher concluded the announcement without further elaboration. Go Hyun-woo then turned to the protagonist and asked if he had already signed up for the mentoring program. The protagonist glanced at his system notification, which confirmed that his application had been completed under his name. He replied that there was no reason to hesitate. With a serious expression, he explained to Go Hyun-woo that participants would be paired with a top-ranking third-year student or a graduate, depending on individual tendencies. He added that chances like this to learn from such people would be rare. Excited, Go Hyun-woo agreed at once and said he would sign up as well. Looking at his own system notification, he thanked the protagonist in advance. The protagonist then turned to Seo Yin and asked about her decision. Still asleep, she responded that it was annoying and that she was too sleepy. The protagonist simply looked at her and thought to himself that she knew how to form aura grenades to some extent, but still had much to learn, so mentoring would be important for her. He wondered if there might be a way to persuade her. Suddenly, Go Hyun-woo's eyes lit up with excitement as he asked the protagonist if he would partner up with him for this week's match. The protagonist laughed softly and agreed without hesitation, saying that teaming up this time would be fine. At that moment, Seo Yin woke up, rubbing her face with her hand, and asked if she couldn't team up with him as well. Go Hyun-woo laughed awkwardly and suggested that, since there were 2 matches this week, they could each partner with him for 1 match. The protagonist, half to himself, wondered if his opinion even mattered. Seo Yin, still groggy but agreeable, replied that the arrangement sounded good. Go Hyun-woo, still excited, then told the protagonist that he needed to train and that the 2 of them should go ahead first. The protagonist responded with a nod and a simple, "Okay, see you tomorrow." The next day, Go Hyun-woo approached the protagonist and apologized for making him wait. The protagonist simply replied that he had arrived just a minute ago. Inside his mind, the protagonist noted how different Go Hyun-woo seemed. His aura felt sharper than the previous day. He wondered what was going on with him. Go Hyun-woo, noticing the protagonist's gaze, smiled gently and said he was looking forward to the match. The protagonist, observing him carefully, thought that Go Hyun-woo's core had reached C rank much faster than expected. Still keeping things light, Go Hyun-woo jokingly asked if the protagonist's match with Seo Yin had gone well the day before. The protagonist rubbed his head awkwardly and admitted they had won, but left it at that. The scene then shifted to the arena, where the protagonist stood facing 2 opponents, a red-haired girl and a boy holding a shield in his hand. The protagonist looked at the red-haired girl and thought about their previous match. He recalled that the opponent they faced the day before had been Hong Yunhwa, a rising star from the Ruby Magic Tower. He realized that he had expected Seo Yin wouldn't be a match for someone of that level yet, but the outcome had been even more one-sided than he had feared. At the same time, a notification appeared in front of him, showing Seo Yin's performance percentages dropping from 81% to 78%, and then to 74%. Seeing this, he thought to himself that, in the end, his worst fears had come true. Meanwhile, Seo Yin was aiming her gun at them from a distance, carefully positioning herself. Observing this, the protagonist understood that she had no defensive abilities whatsoever. Without hesitation, the protagonist launched himself toward them, gripping his staff tightly. As he got close, he activated his skill, causing a surge of blue energy to gather in his hand. He struck the boy with the staff, sending him flying backward. The red-haired girl, seeing this, became visibly nervous and frightened. The protagonist stood firmly in front of her, staff aimed directly at her, ready to confront her. Later, while checking his system panel, the protagonist reflected on how he had managed to pull everything together somehow, even suggesting that Seo Yin join the mentoring program. But, despite his efforts, she hadn't shown any interest. Turning to Go Hyun-woo, he mentioned that fact, prompting Go Hyun-woo to laugh awkwardly. He admitted that a lot had happened, and that the kid probably needed to be beaten by someone at least once. However, when Go Hyun-woo's words came out a bit harshly, the protagonist was taken aback. Just then, the protagonist's system flashed with a new notification. A match had been found, and seeing it, Go Hyun-woo's eyes lit up with excitement as he eagerly announced that he would show off the results of his training. Without warning, both of them were transported to a new location. Looking around with a shocked expression, Go Hyun-woo asked what was happening and who their opponents were this time. The protagonist's eyes locked on the group standing across from them. It was Seo Yin and her team. At that exact moment, another notification appeared, displaying the team lineup. Jang Sam with 572 points, and Seo Yin with 741 points. Stunned, Go Hyun-woo whispered in disbelief that they were once again facing Seo Yin. Seeing the situation, the protagonist smiled and thought to himself that this was the perfect opportunity to make Seo Yin realize her own weaknesses in defense. Go Hyun-woo, looking at him with concern, asked if they would win. The protagonist smiled confidently and assured him that they would. Without wasting any time, Seo Yin launched an attack at the protagonist, determined to take him down herself. Go Hyun-woo, following behind, responded with determination that he would support him. As the two moved toward their opponents, Seo Yin immediately used a smoke bomb to obscure the area. The protagonist, seeing it, thought it was exactly what he expected her to do. He dismissed the attack as useless and pressed forward without slowing down. Seo Yin, not saying a word but sweating from the pressure, fired bullets at the protagonist. He calmly dodged each one without any trouble. When he finally reached her, she quickly prepared to fire again. However, before the shot could be taken, the protagonist struck her gun aside, readied his punch infused with skill, and threw it toward her. Yet, before the punch could land, he stopped it mid-air and flicked her forehead with his finger. Looking at her, he asked whether they should continue the fight. Unable to meet his gaze, Seo Yin quietly admitted defeat. The protagonist observed that her pride had clearly taken a blow. Turning his attention to Go Hyun-woo, he recalled what Shin Byung-chul had mentioned earlier, that there was one more hidden talent among their opponents. As he watched their battle, he focused on the unnatural movement of one opponent's right hand. He thought it strange from the beginning, but hadn't figured out why until now. Suddenly, the protagonist called out and told both teams to stop. They paused, confused, and turned toward him. Calmly, the protagonist accused them of hiding their true abilities and challenged them to fight for real. He stated that he was already fighting seriously and suggested that if they were concerned about the replay being public, they could make it private. To motivate them further, he offered them the reward of information about Uriong-yong, Ghostly Shadow, if they won. The name startled Uriong-yong, who turned to face the protagonist in shock. The protagonist thought to himself that he had struck a nerve. Still shaken, Uriong-yong declared that anyone valuing secrecy so much wouldn't want to miss this hidden detail. The protagonist, smiling confidently, responded that he had only promised to share the information if they won and asked how he could know that. Uriong-yong gripped his sword, preparing for another battle. He told Go Hyun-woo that if he was willing to go that far, then he would fight as desired. At the same time, Go Hyun-woo noticed how suddenly Uriong's gaze had changed and vowed to give it his all. Without hesitation, both engaged in battle, fiercer than ever before. Notifications began flashing one after another as Go Hyun-woo attacked aggressively. Go HYUNWO, 87%. Go HYONWO 73%. Go HYONWO 68%. Despite the growing exhaustion, the protagonist, watching the fight, thought to himself that he would end it with a decisive strike. As the final attack neared Go Hyun-woo, he remained calm, steadying himself before the confrontation escalated further. In an instant, Go Hyun-woo expertly dodged his opponent's attack and immediately countered using a skill called Rapid Current. The sudden strike left his opponent stunned. Before either could recover, the force of their clashing swords caused both weapons to break apart. The protagonist then stepped forward and told them it was enough, signaling the end of the match. He activated his skill, causing a small energy to gather at his fingertips, and instructed both to rest. At that moment, the announcement board displayed the match results, showing that the protagonist and Go Hyun-woo had won, while Seo Yeon and Jang Sam had lost. The protagonist glanced at his friend, silently reflecting that although staying within the system technically counted as a win, in reality, it felt like a loss. The match had been decided the moment Jang Sam, unable to block the attack, revealed his true level. He admitted that his opponent was still just shy of reaching a promising rank, at least for now. Shortly after, Jang Sam regained consciousness and, upon seeing the result, quietly acknowledged his defeat. The protagonist confirmed it without elaboration. Jang Sam, without looking at the protagonist, remarked that although the outcome was unfortunate, it had still been a good match. The protagonist assured him that Go Hyun-woo would feel the same way. Before departing, Jang Sam adjusted his shoulder and asked the protagonist if his techniques had been too obvious. The protagonist smiled and explained that they had been a little noticeable, mentioning that his sword grip appeared awkward and overly ordinary, which made his moves easier to read. Surprised, Jang Sam asked if being too ordinary made it obvious. The protagonist clarified by asking him to consider the nature of the Dragon Slayer Academy, where the strongest individuals from around the world gathered. In such a competitive environment, anything ordinary stood out more than usual. Jang Sam reflected on this thoughtfully, agreeing that being ordinary would indeed attract attention in such a setting. He then respectfully bowed to the protagonist, expressing gratitude for the advice and asking about another skill, Ghost Shadow Step. The protagonist reminded him that he should only ask about it after a victory. Meanwhile, Go Hyun-woo remained unconscious on the ground, while Jang Sam, gathering himself, promised to challenge the protagonist again next time. The protagonist, without hesitation, agreed to face him whenever he was ready. Later, the protagonist and Go Hyun-woo were transported back to the arena. Go Hyun-woo, still embarrassed by his performance, confessed his shame and asked the protagonist for his opinion on the match. The protagonist gently reassured him, explaining that Go Hyun-woo had cleverly created openings through probing attacks and ended the fight smoothly with a clean finishing move. Go Hyun-woo glanced at his broken sword with worry, expressing concern that he couldn't keep avoiding the issue forever. The protagonist, sensing his anxiety, jokingly suggested that the solution was simple. He just needed a better sword. Go Hyun-woo, embarrassed, thought to himself that his financial situation wasn't great enough to afford such a luxury. Without hesitation, the protagonist pulled out a book from his inventory and handed it to Go Hyun-woo, explaining that weapons didn't necessarily have to be bought with money alone, and asked how many points he had saved. Go Hyun-woo quickly checked his points and revealed that he had about 5,000 saved. The protagonist assured him that this was more than enough and recommended purchasing both an E-rank and a D-rank longsword. Go Hyun-woo followed the suggestion and bought the items. The system notification confirmed the purchases, listing both swords and additional crafting materials called thermal catalyst reagents, which he also bought with his remaining points. The protagonist instructed him to first hand over the reagents, and when Go Hyun-woo asked what they were used for, the protagonist explained they were crafting materials and promised to help him create a useful item. He encouraged Go Hyun-woo to focus on recovering and assured him that they would work on it together. Grateful, Go Hyun-woo smiled gently and thanked the protagonist. That evening, the protagonist made his way to the fourth workshop, thinking about how the week's duels had already concluded and that he should prepare materials for an item to assist Go Hyun-woo. Upon entering, he greeted the room and was met by a boy working on something. The boy looked back briefly but quickly returned to his task, clearly uninterested in the protagonist's presence. The protagonist recalled how this boy had been scolded by Bong Jae-suk previously for meddling and assumed he wasn't fond of interruptions. Still, the protagonist approached him again, apologizing silently as he tried to replicate a skill he observed. His system registered the action, confirming that he successfully copied another skill, now filling his slots. Thinking ahead, the protagonist realized that with his new skill, he would no longer need another one and decided it was time to let it go. He smiled while surveying the abandoned equipment scattered around the room, considering it an ideal place to gather decent materials. These items were failed projects, discarded for some reason, but their crafted parts remained intact. He reasoned that dismantling such items was usually harder than acquiring new materials, but this time, it might work in his favor. He began working on dismantling the equipment, and the boy eventually noticed and asked what he was doing. Without looking up, the protagonist explained that he was trying to extract materials from it. Sweating nervously, the boy asked if he could watch, and the protagonist, smiling, agreed without hesitation. He handed the boy a glass tube filled with materials, which astonished him. The boy marveled at how clean the materials looked, almost brand new despite being dismantled. The protagonist, thinking a good opportunity, asked if the boy would be interested in trading some materials. The boy's eyes lit up with excitement, and he eagerly asked what the protagonist needed. The protagonist listed a few essential components. The boy then hesitated, worrying that Bong Jae-suk might scold him again for such dealings. The protagonist reassured him that trading a few materials shouldn't be a problem, and that if necessary, direct permission could be obtained. Relieved but anxious, the boy offered to send a message to seek approval. Although the message was seen but not replied to, he interpreted the lack of response as consent. However, before he could finish his thought, Bong Jae-suk suddenly appeared at the door, soaked in sweat. The boy was stunned, unable to comprehend the situation. Bong Jae-suk ignored the commotion and approached the protagonist directly. Without asking for explanations, he inquired whether the protagonist had dismantled the equipment himself. Waiting for a response, he promptly presented another set of items, explaining that although it was a failed project, it had consumed a significant amount of materials. Pointing at the tough-looking equipment, Bong Jae-suk challenged the protagonist, asking if he could dismantle it. The scene ended with the protagonist facing the challenge. The protagonist examined the equipment and noted that the task would take some time. Bong Jae-suk responded by acknowledging that and assured the protagonist he would be compensated fairly for the effort. The protagonist smiled and mentioned that since he also needed materials, he would accept payment in the form of goods rather than currency. Bong Jae-suk agreed and offered to prepare whatever the protagonist required as soon as he sent the list. He then reassured him that it wasn't urgent, encouraged him to take his time, and told him to send the requirements by message. The protagonist responded respectfully. Meanwhile, the boy who had been working nearby pointed at himself and asked for a favor. The protagonist inquired what the favor was, and the boy explained that there was something he needed dismantled in another location. The protagonist didn't mind and agreed to help. The boy expressed his gratitude and promised to assist in procuring whatever materials the protagonist might need. The next morning, the protagonist entered his classroom, surprised at how quickly the morning had come. He thought about finishing his tasks after class since there was still plenty of time and considered taking a quick nap before lessons began. Noticing his friend early in the room, he wondered why she was there so soon, recalling how she had vanished without a word the previous day. He calmly approached her and asked why she was there so early, whether she had skipped breakfast, and if she wanted something to eat. She didn't respond, but instead expressed her annoyance. The protagonist, observing her reaction, realized that she was still holding onto some resentment. Trying to ease the tension, he explained that the match the day before had been one-sided and that his intention had only been to point out her weaknesses. He mentioned that her fighting style became drastically weaker when her position was exposed, and since her magic bullets had solidified, he suggested she consider investing in a support skill this time. This caught her attention, and she asked if he would personally give her special training. The protagonist gently placed bread on the table and explained that although he wanted to help, this was something she would benefit more from learning with another expert in the field. Even if it was troublesome, he advised that she sign up for mentoring. After a brief pause, she accepted and agreed to do it. Just then, Go Hyun-woo appeared unexpectedly and remarked on her decision to sign up. The protagonist encouraged the move and asked if Go Hyun-woo was feeling all right. Go Hyun-woo expressed gratitude, saying that thanks to the protagonist, he was in perfect physical condition. However, he admitted that although his body was fine, he was still concerned about the weapon he had purchased the day before. He planned to test it during the upcoming duels. The protagonist smiled, noticing what Go Hyun-woo was holding, and encouraged him to use that weapon as well. Go Hyun-woo, surprised by the item the protagonist handed him, questioned it, unsure if it was just a simple clip. The protagonist calmly explained that while it looked ordinary, it was actually a protective item that helped maintain weapon durability by automatically restoring it when needed. The item's details appeared on the screen, confirming that it was a sturdy clip capable of shielding the weapon's condition and repairing it as necessary. The protagonist then attached the clip to Go Hyun-woo's clothing and suggested he try it along with a new weapon he had obtained from a previous duel. Go Hyun-woo, feeling reassured, expressed his gratitude and promised to make good use of the item. Later, during training matches, a white-haired girl appeared alongside Go Hyun-woo's team. A notification displayed the match details, showing Go Hyun-woo's team facing Young Suji, Park Nari, and others, with their stamina levels at full capacity. As the teams prepared to face off, Go Hyun-woo recognized Park Nari as a promising member of the Nature Club. He recalled warnings from Senior about the spirit beast associated with her and stayed cautious. The match began when the green-haired girl, petting her creature, signaled it to get ready. The small kitty on her shoulder leapt down and instantly transformed into a massive tiger enveloped in green energy. The beast charged fiercely toward Go Hyun-woo's team. Reacting quickly, Go Hyun-woo defended against the tiger's assault with his sword and signaled his teammate to attack. The white-haired girl joined the fight, striking the tiger with her powerful technique. However, she was shocked to see that the attack barely damaged the beast, with only a fraction of its health affected. Panic set in as she realized how resilient the tiger was. The tiger retaliated by striking the white-haired girl, sending her flying, while Go Hyun-woo called out to her in concern. The beast then turned its attack on Go Hyun-woo, breaking his sword and knocking him back. As he struggled to control himself before hitting the ground, he thought about the limitations of using an E-rank weapon against such a powerful foe. Determined not to give up, he summoned another sword and, still observing the tiger, admitted that this battle would be difficult to win. His teammate agreed and proposed trying a different approach. Meanwhile, the tiger fully recovered its health, as confirmed by the system notification, which displayed its status returning to maximum. Go Hyun-woo quickly realized that the opposing team's strategy relied on placing the spirit beast at the front to continuously regenerate its health. He also noted that the two girls supporting the beast were leaving the caster defenseless, depending entirely on the beast's power. Recognizing the pattern, Go Hyun-woo pointed to his teammate and urged her to aim directly at the tiger's core, understanding that this was their best chance to turn the fight in their favor. Both Go Hyun-woo and Bukung instantly launched themselves toward the two girls standing opposite them, ready to attack. The blue-haired girl, holding a crystal in her hand, had anticipated this kind of assault and immediately activated a defensive skill. A barrier of trees appeared around her and her companion, shielding them from the incoming attacks. Seeing the sudden appearance of the tree barrier, both Go Hyun-woo and Bukung were momentarily shocked. Without hesitation, Bukung activated her skill, releasing a powerful ice-infused strike, while Go Hyun-woo used his own skill to launch a concentrated stream of force. Go Hyun-woo, thinking through the situation, realized that their attacks wouldn't break the barrier so easily. He resolved that his next strike would need to surpass the protective spell's limits and finish the fight in one decisive blow. However, before he could act, the tiger, which had been lurking behind him, appeared and attacked, swiftly defeating Bukung. Go Hyun-woo, startled by the tiger's sudden presence, froze for a moment. The scene shifted to later in the arena, where the scoreboard confirmed the outcome. Go Hyun-woo and Bukung's team lost, while Park Nari's team emerged victorious. The next day, Go Hyun-woo expressed regret over the humiliating scene from the previous day. The protagonist reassured him that his efforts were commendable given the opponent's exceptional talent. Go Hyun-woo then asked what the protagonist would have done in such a situation. The protagonist explained that beyond strategy or technique, the vast gap in equipment was the decisive factor. He elaborated that Park Nari, supported by the Nature Club, had access to a wide range of skills and recently acquired a powerful artifact through trade, equipping her with superior items from head to toe. Upon hearing this, Go Hyun-woo, sweating in disbelief, recognized that losing had been inevitable. The opponent's strength wasn't just based on skill, but also thorough preparation. The protagonist suggested that it might be time to consider other options. He explained that matching Park Nari's level of equipment was impossible, but countermeasures could still be pursued. This gave Go Hyun-woo hope, and he asked if there was indeed a way. The protagonist confidently spoke about a rare debuff-type item, the Demon's Sword, which was essential for top-tier swordsmen. Hearing about it for the first time, Go Hyun-woo reacted with surprise and admitted that this was something new he had learned from the protagonist. The protagonist then pointed to the clip attached to Go Hyun-woo's clothing and emphasized that the priority should be ensuring the durability of his weapon. He advised focusing on acquiring artifacts that enhance weapon durability, especially for B-rank weapons and higher. Go Hyun-woo doubted the feasibility of obtaining such items, as they wouldn't be easy to acquire. The protagonist, however, smiled and explained that while it might be early, there was a way, obtaining the items as drops from underground dungeons associated with the Dungeon Association. Go Hyun-woo immediately raised concerns, pointing out that it was duel season, making such excursions impossible. The protagonist calmly explained that it wouldn't matter because they wouldn't be able to access the underground dungeon next week either. When Go Hyun-woo asked why, the protagonist explained that the underground dungeon involved real combat, unlike the surface. Freshmen who had just enrolled wouldn't be sent into life or death battles. Still worried, Go Hyun-woo asked if that meant there was no way at all. The protagonist reassured him that while it wasn't possible officially, there was another option. Go Hyun-woo questioned the meaning behind officially, and the protagonist confidently proposed that they could sneak in, using the errand service to gain access covertly. Upon hearing this, Go Hyun-woo realized that the protagonist was referring to Shin Byung-chul, confirming the plan without hesitation. The protagonist confidently assured Go Hyun-woo that Shin Byung-chul would arrive soon. Not long after, Shin Byung-chul appeared before them with excitement, eager to assist. The protagonist explained that he was planning to enter a dungeon, and that Monday evening would be the perfect time. Shin Byung-chul immediately asked for the dungeon number. Without hesitation, the protagonist revealed it as number 388. Taking out his notebook, Shin Byung-chul confirmed that it was a D-rank dungeon called Feathered Serpent Altar, meant for 4 people, and questioned who would be entering. The protagonist pointed to Go Hyun-woo, indicating that it would be just the 2 of them. Though concerned that things could go wrong and that he might be held responsible, Shin Byung-chul hesitated. The protagonist, however, assured him that in the worst case, they could simply bail out of the dungeon. Go Hyun-woo supported this decision, expressing his commitment to accompany the protagonist. Reluctantly, Shin Byung-chul agreed and began preparing for their entry on Monday evening. The protagonist then asked what the payment for this request would be. Shin Byung-chul smiled and jokingly said that between them, payment wasn't necessary since he still owed the protagonist from past event. He considered it settled and promised to assist wholeheartedly, despite admitting with some humor that he had only ventured underground once before. The protagonist, recognizing that Shin Byung-chul wasn't all that familiar with dungeon explorations, reassured him not to half-heartedly approach the task. Shin Byung-chul, though slightly embarrassed, vowed to give his utmost dedication. Taking things a step further, the protagonist proposed adding another dungeon to their mission for experience's sake, Dungeon number 104, a B-rank dungeon known as Black Serpent Fong, which delved into deep levels. Shin Byung-chul immediately objected, stating that it was beyond his ability to handle, but the protagonist encouraged him to at least ask the chief about it. After some thought, Shin Byung-chul agreed it wasn't entirely impossible and promised to inquire about it. He then confirmed their plan and left them with a promise to meet Monday evening. Once he left, the protagonist turned to Go Hyun-woo and suggested that they should finalize their plan. Go Hyun-woo eagerly agreed and asked what needed to be done. The protagonist explained that they would first enter the scheduled D-rank dungeon, Feathered Serpent Altar, where Go Hyun-woo would obtain his weapon while the protagonist would achieve his own goals. He further elaborated that the following days would be used for preparation, including negotiating with the Thieves Club about accessing the deeper dungeon and securing necessary items. He warned that even the smallest mistake in such a dungeon could be fatal. Go Hyun-woo assured the protagonist that he was ready. The protagonist emphasized that Go Hyun-woo's role was crucial, not only in terms of skill but also in coordination, and that he needed to be as knowledgeable about the dungeon as the protagonist himself. When Go Hyun-woo saw the walkthrough books laid out before him, he was shocked, barely able to speak. The protagonist smiled and explained that these were detailed guides for both of them, instructing Go Hyun-woo to memorize every word without leaving anything out. The scene shifted to workshop number 1, where the protagonist was working on something when Bong Jae-sok arrived. He inquired about the materials the protagonist had been gathering, specifically the floating stone extract, mana engine, and weather chip, and asked if they had been obtained. The protagonist gratefully explained that thanks to Bong Jae-sok's help, he was able to acquire those rare materials without difficulty and expressed his appreciation. Bong Jae-sok then glanced at the gathered materials and noticed the protagonist wrapping things up. He asked if he could take a closer look, and the protagonist gave permission, asking him to wait a moment while he finished. The protagonist completed his work with visible excitement and announced that it was done. Bong Jae-sok, observing the staff, expressed curiosity about what the protagonist had been crafting. He mentioned that, judging by the shape, it appeared to be the head of a staff or scepter, and asked if the main body had been acquired. The protagonist smiled and explained that he hadn't found anything suitable yet and intended to take his time finding the right piece. Inwardly, he wondered if he should search in the lower levels of the dungeon district. Bong Jae-sok then mentioned that with the rainy season over, the protagonist might not be coming to the workshop as often. The protagonist acknowledged this and expressed his gratitude, saying he would still visit from time to time. The scene then shifted to Class 1-3's classroom, where the teacher explained the theme of the week's strategy mission, Sweep. A map labeled Rocky Zone appeared on the board along with rules outlining that the dungeon was a two-person instance with random matchmaking. The teacher further explained that anyone could achieve a high score if they cleared all the monsters. There was no time limit, so students should be on the lookout for hidden enemies. He emphasized that the terrain and teammates would be randomized, and students would be tested in a new environment with unfamiliar partners. Closing his book, the teacher encouraged the students to work together and take their time before dismissing the class. Afterward, Go Hyun-woo turned to the protagonist and observed that it seemed they wouldn't be able to pair up for this week's mission. The protagonist replied with a gentle smile, agreeing that everyone would be going solo. At that moment, Seo Yin, who had been asleep, woke up and recommended pausing the Mana Bullet lectures for the week, noting that mentoring week was approaching and new skills could be learned then. She suggested focusing on strengthening fundamentals in the meantime. Go Hyun-woo agreed, saying that sounded good, while Seo Yin simply nodded. The protagonist, with a joking expression, advised them to try the practice mode before jumping into the actual mission. Internally, he thought that practice mode was pointless for him and just a waste of time. As the protagonist looked ahead, he thought to himself that he was going straight for the actual mission without hesitation. His attention then shifted to the system notification, and he silently hoped that he would be paired with a decent partner. Regardless of who he got, he was aiming to achieve a perfect score of 100%. He considered what the ideal teammate would be and realized that someone whose skills he could copy would be best suited. The system displayed the protagonist's current skill slots, showing that he already had 2 skills, Magi Tech and Silent Step. The protagonist realized that he wouldn't be using Magi Tech anytime soon, so he thought about overriding that slot with a more combat-oriented skill. At that moment, he noticed his partner arriving just in time. Then, as he focused on the portal, he became puzzled and wondered what was happening. A red-haired girl appeared from the portal, and upon recognizing her, he was surprised but also a little amused, realizing it was someone he had encountered before, Hong Yunhwa. The red-haired girl, equally shocked, reacted strongly, recognizing the protagonist immediately and feeling distressed that she had run into him again. The protagonist wondered why she was reacting so intensely. Meanwhile, the red-haired girl's mind recalled past matches they had fought in, from placement exams to PvP battles, where she had always crushed him. She figured it was only natural for him to be intimidated. The protagonist, smiling to himself, thought that his main goal was to efficiently clear the quest. He considered that creating a slightly tense atmosphere would make things easier for him, so he decided to keep that tension going. He then looked at her with confidence, impatient that she wasn't moving, and urged her to get going without further delay. The red-haired girl, with tears in her eyes and nervousness on her face, reluctantly agreed to follow him. As they ran together later on, the red-haired girl began to regret her decision. She sat silently, thinking that she should have taken the day off and tried again the next day, instead of insisting on clearing the mission early just to save face. After running for some time, she looked at the protagonist ahead of her and silently cried out in frustration. She never wanted to partner with him and wondered how she ended up stuck with him. She also questioned where they were headed, as the area around them appeared strangely empty. Not realizing that the protagonist was effortlessly killing every monster without attracting attention, she simply looked at the system notification and wondered why it seemed too easy. She thought it strange that there should be monsters around every corner, but the area remained empty. Spotting a fallen goblin nearby, she panicked, believing there was still one monster left, and called out to the protagonist for help. The protagonist, however, ignored her pleas, which frustrated her even more. She clenched her teeth in irritation, wondering why he wouldn't even respond to her calls for help. She felt like she was stuck cleaning up the mess alone. In her frustration, she activated her own skill, combustion, and attacked a monster, all the while thinking to herself how impressive the protagonist's combat was, even though she was annoyed. Internally, she wished they would stick together and grow frustrated that he wouldn't cooperate. Though she didn't say it aloud, the thought lingered in her mind. Meanwhile, the protagonist, running ahead of her, impatiently scolded her in his mind, wondering if she thought she could solo the entire mission by herself. He urged her not to fall behind and to keep up with his pace. The red-haired girl, Manhwa, hesitated for a moment but then agreed to follow the protagonist's orders, responding awkwardly as if unsure but willing to cooperate. As she looked at the protagonist, she grew suspicious. She thought to herself that something fell off during the entire mission. He hadn't once hesitated or paused. He was charging forward without giving it a second thought, as if he had completed this exact mission hundreds of times before. Without warning, the protagonist suddenly stopped and told her to hold up. He pointed toward a tunnel in the distance and questioned whether it was a burrow. Curious, he suggested that they should take a closer look. Examining the entrance, Manhwa concluded that it was likely a goblin burrow because of its small size, too tiny for a person to crawl through. The protagonist, confident in his approach, told her to check it out anyway. Startled, she hesitated and asked if she really had to go. The protagonist gave her a threatening look, implying that she could handle it and pushing her further. Feeling pressured, she nervously agreed and decided to crawl into the hole, though reluctant. Watching her enter the burrow, the protagonist was confused. He hadn't expected her to physically go inside. He had only meant for her to cast a fire spell inside from outside. As she crawled in, a yellow light suddenly burst from the tunnel. The protagonist noticed it and wondered aloud what that glow was. Before anyone could react, the tunnel exploded. The protagonist, unfazed, commented that such fiery explosions were typical in a dungeon like Ruby Tower. After the dust settled, Manhwa crawled out of the burrow, rubbing her face in frustration. She complained about the ordeal, wondering why she was putting herself through this, yet resignedly admitted that dungeon crawling often led to such chaotic moments. Standing up, she expressed relief that they had found the goblin burrow in time and that they managed to eliminate the goblins before they could escape. Just then, the system notification informed them that only one monster remained. The protagonist noted this and said that they only needed to defeat the final boss to complete the mission. However, before they could react, a dangerous monster suddenly appeared from behind them. The protagonist quickly grabbed Manhwa and warned her not to lose focus in a dungeon. Feeling awkward, she apologized, blaming the explosion for possibly alerting nearby monsters. The large boss monster now stood before them. The protagonist explained that this must be the dungeon's boss and reassured her that since they had to fight him anyway, it was a good opportunity. He encouraged her to stay sharp, promising that the battle would be manageable if they attacked together. Observing her, he thought to himself that she still seemed shaken and partially blamed himself for that. He resolved to help boost her confidence. With that in mind, he surprised her by telling her to take the boss on solo. The girl was shocked by this sudden challenge, unsure how she could face such a powerful opponent alone. The protagonist, however, confidently urged her on, insisting she could handle it and encouraging her not to back down. Motivated by his words, she bravely stepped forward and accepted the challenge, saying she'd give it a try. Inside, the protagonist smiled to himself, eager to see her true potential and silently cheering her on to prove her worth. The girl then positioned herself for an attack, gathering magical energy at the tip of her wand. The protagonist, watching closely, thought to himself that this was her moment to show her real strength. She activated her skill, Overheat, and launched the attack. The monster, instantly irritated by the sudden strike, charged toward her in anger. Seeing the monster's reaction, Hong Yunhua panicked, thinking about how fast it had retaliated. She questioned when it could have moved so quickly. As the monster raised its weapon to strike, she felt desperate not to lose. Fueled by determination, she jumped into the air, activating her next skill, Flame Orb, and launched an attack directly at the monster. Seeing the attack hit the monster perfectly, she felt a rush of excitement and satisfaction, believing that she had struck it dead on. But to her dismay, the monster barely flinched. It reappeared from the explosion, seemingly unharmed and ready to attack again.